Hey guys, this is Frank Yecker, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
Hey, this is Rich Franklin.
What's up, everybody? This is Chris Lieben. This is Diego Sanchez. Randy Couture.
Alistair Overeem.
Hi, this is Stephen Thompson.
This is Don Fry.
Hey, I'm Phil, Mr. Wonderful Davis.
TJ Dillashaw.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Welcome to episode 102 of Submission Radio. Dennis Graf here with Kasper Ozolowski. It's the 2nd of October. We're getting close to summer here in Australia and, of course, winter wherever you are overseas. But, Kasper, another big episode of Submission Radio here for all the listeners.
Yeah, man, you mentioned summer. Things are definitely heating up. One of our biggest episodes in a long time. I know we just got done with episode 100, but this is a fat, stacked, and juicy episode. We got a bunch of guests, so let's run through them. Owen Roddy. A lot of people say, hey, how come you never get anybody from Team McGregor on? Well, we do today. Owen Roddy, Conor McGregor's longtime striking coach and formerly one of the most exciting fighters from Ireland, is going to be stopping by Submission Radio to talk about, of course, UFC 205, Eddie Alvarez, Conor McGregor, all things surrounding that event. Then we've got Tony Ferguson, the man who I guess a lot of people in some ways have kind of forgotten. He's been laying low. He's been working on a lot of secret projects, and he's going to be facing Rafael dos Anjos very shortly, just a week before UFC 205. So we figured, let's get Tony on. Now, UFC 204 is next week. Michael Bisping takes on Dan Henderson. We've got Jason Parillo, who of course has been Michael Bisping's longtime coach, and of course he coaches Cyborg as well. So we figured we'd pick the man's brain, give us a bit of a preview. Speaking of preview, Simon Head of thesun.co.uk, a fantastic journalist straight out of England, is going to be coming on the show to once again preview UFC 204, talk about Michael Bisping, and because he's obviously boots on the ground there, just give us a preview of what the vibe is like there. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, that's right, the stacked lineup keeps continuing. Back on the show. You guys said you wanted him back on the show. You guys requested it, so we did exactly that. We got Wonderboy to talk about this UFC 205 welterweight title fight against Tyron Woodley. And speaking of people that you've requested, the Thai guy, Matt Morea, who most people are sitting there thinking, who is this? If you saw the UFC 205 press conference, you would have seen the man at the very end, hey, you there with the tie, that asked the final question and that really gave it to Eddie Alvarez. You guys requested, hey, get him on the show, talk to him. So you know what? We want to find out who this mysterious man is. So we got him on the show. And then Jeremy Botta, fireworks last time he was on Submission Radio, absolute fireworks. He's coming back to give us his insight on this entire UFC 205 situation. Jose Aldo, if he'll retire, is this a sneaky negotiation ploy? Conor McGregor, Alvarez, why this fight took so long to put together, and just 205 in general, who he thinks is going to win. There's a lot to be talking about. And as far as the topics, we're going to be talking about UFC Fight Night, Lineker versus Dodson, a couple of fights there from that event with Simon Head, UFC 204 and UFC 205. So yeah, the episode, it's stacked to the tits, isn't it, Dennis?
Yeah, that's right. So happy to get a show like this together for all the listeners, and really excited for you guys to check this one out and let us know what you think. And the best way to do that is through our social media at Submission AUS on Twitter, and you can jump on Facebook. You can message us through there. That's facebook.com/Submission Radio AUS. So do that. Also, we love seeing your reviews on iTunes. That helps the show. So if you get a second, jump on, do it. We love checking them out and reading them. And just wanted to let everybody know, we do have a huge show this week. Next week, we'll be doing a breakdown of UFC 204. So it won't be an official Submission Radio episode. It's going to be a breakdown show. It's going to be a bit shorter. We're going to really go into UFC 204, discuss what's going to happen with this whole Michael Bisping, Dan Henderson thing. And like Kasper mentioned, Simon Head will be doing a preview, and we'll also be giving our predictions as to what's going to happen in the main event. So that's something to stay tuned to. But a massive show. And we've got our first guest on the line. Kasper, I believe you're ready to introduce him.
Alright guys, our next guest spent his fighting career as one of Ireland's most exciting and beloved fighters, a former cage contender featherweight champion. He now coaches at the famous SBG Ireland as well as his own gym, SBG Charlestown, Dublin. He's also been training Conor McGregor for well over 10 years and will be helping him prepare for UFC 205, where he takes on Eddie Alvarez for the UFC lightweight title. He has been known as Rowdy long before Ronda Rousey. Rowdy Owen Roddy, welcome to Submission Radio. What's the crack, mate?
I'm not too bad. Thanks for having me, guys. Yeah. I like the intro, man. You
You'd make anybody sound good.
We put about 7 hours of work into that one, crafted it with our writers.
None of the other guests on this program are getting any decent questions because we focused on you, Owen. But let's talk about this last week because it's been a crazy whirlwind if you're an MMA fan. I mean, UFC 205 is fast approaching. We spent the week wondering what the main event was. There was no clear main event. People weren't sure if McGregor was going to be on the card. How has this week been for you? And what was it like sort of knowing all along that Conor was going to fight Eddie?
Well, I mean, we had an inkling. We knew Conor had accepted it, but we were all a little bit up in the air whether it was actually gonna go ahead. Like Conor had accepted that, and I think they had accepted, but there was just, there's always this little bit back and forth for a couple of days before anything is confirmed. So we were a little bit up in the air up until a couple of days ago. But now that it's announced, it's fantastic. There's going to be an amazing main event, and the card overall is after. It did look like it was falling apart, and then the UFC, Dana obviously did some magic and pulled it out of the bag. It's going to be a fantastic card, so I'm looking forward to it.
Oh yeah, isn't it funny how you've got this stacked card, you've got 2 title fights, and yet obviously people still looking at it as the card is falling apart because obviously your man Conor McGregor isn't there. Just curious though, because we imagine you guys would have known for a while about this fight, and it was us that was in the dark. When exactly did you find out? What was the day that it was official and you guys all knew?
When it was confirmed. What day is it today? It was about two days before the press conference, 2 or 3 days.
Wow. That
I knew that it was actually confirmed. But I'd talked to Conor previously about a week or so prior, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm ready to go," and just waiting to see what the crack is. But it was just a little bit up in the air. But yeah, officially, I found out like 2 days before everybody else, and Conor was straight onto a plane straight to New York to do the press conference.
It's interesting that you mentioned you and Conor spoke because I'm just wondering how much of an input do yourself and John Kavanagh have over who Conor fights next? Is it sort of a group discussion or is it more decided by Conor and his management?
Yeah, it's it's mainly Conor, to be totally honest. Like he whatever he feels is the best option for him, then he'll put it to John, and then John will give his opinion on it, and I'll give my opinion on it. But it's mainly Conor, and I think everybody agreed. Most of the time he'll pick who we want him to pick anyways. Like I think we'll all be in agreement anyways, but it'll be ultimately Conor's decision. But I mean the Alvarez fight, I think everybody wants the Alvarez fight. They all, Aldo again, like maybe down the line, I don't know. But, I mean, of the people to pick, I think anybody would have said, oh, yeah, I would much rather see Conor v. Alvarez over Diaz again and over Aldo. So it was a no-brainer pretty much,
Well, I mean, yeah, there is a reason why this fight is so big. I'm just wondering, was there any sort of pressure within the team or any internal pressure that Conor should rematch Jose Aldo and defend the featherweight belt?
No, there was no pressure at all. Like, at the end of the day, it's what makes more sense for the sport. And I honestly believe that what Conor's doing is unbelievable, and for him to be going for 2 titles and to hold them at the same time, it's never been done before. So I mean, you got to back that. I think everybody wants to see it, so everybody, everybody's excited for it. I'm sure Dana and the UFC is excited to see how this plays out.
Well, I'm just curious, what did you think of Aldo requesting his release from the UFC after the news of McGregor and Alvarez came out? Did you get a chance to sort of see the news, and what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that he has to be released. I don't know. I know it's a bit frustrating by him. He wants his rematch, but I think overall, the majority of people want to see the Alvarez fight over that. Like, I mean, I don't know whether he could fight again. In the meantime, it's up to him. I know he wants the Conor fight. I'm sure it will happen if he waits for it. But to be asked to be released, I mean, that's his decision. I don't really I don't really have much of an opinion on it. But what I do have opinion on is, you know, the fight that people want to see is Conor v Alvarez. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah. Well, we were there at UFC 202 to witness the amazing fight between Conor and Nate Diaz. And, you know, we saw obviously Conor on crutches afterwards. When did he actually return to the gym and start training again, Owen?
He was back in the gym moving about 2 days afterwards. He was in Vegas. He was back moving about. I mean, he was, you know, you seen the amount of kicks he threw in the Diaz fight, and he obviously caught a few of them on the knee and just really badly bruised his shin. But there was no serious issue with the foot. I think they found a small fracture from a while back, but it was you know, it was nothing. But the shin itself was just really, you know, really bashed up from after the fight. But within a couple of days, he was back. He was back training, moving around in the gym in Vegas. So, you know, there's no issue there. He's 100%, and he was a couple of days after it. But you know yourself, you're flying on adrenaline during the fight, and then as soon as the fight's over, you start to feel everything, and there is nothing more saying. I mean, anyone that's fought or, you know, spars around, when you take a few, you know, you kick a knee with the shin and it goes deep in on the bone, it's very, very painful.
Yeah, no, certainly nothing more painful than that. While we're on that topic, there's a great video of you courtesy of Severe MMA talking about how much your chin was affected after the Emmanuel Fernandez fight and how it took you 2 years to recover. It was a really fascinating watch, by the way. After the war that Conor went through that night, and given what you've been through in the past, was there any part of you that wanted to see him get a bit more rest in between fights?
No, not really, because when you look at, you know, my fight with Emmanuel Fernandez, I got knocked clean out, like, you know, pure stiff asleep. I lost a couple of minutes memory and all in that fight. I only remember coming around when I was backstage. I don't remember, you know, getting up, walking out of the ring, going backstage, anything like that. That was all gone, and I don't have that memory. But Conor, he was hit, but Conor's so good at rolling with the shots. He never once really got dazed or rocked. He got hit hard a couple of times, but nothing where, you know, you could tell he was dazed or really hurt. So, and he very, very rarely, I've seen Conor being hit clean, flush, and you know, I could count on my hands how many times I've seen him being hit cleanly. So, although, you know, certain exchanges looked like he was getting hit, but if you look at them very carefully, you know, maybe out of 20 punches thrown, one landed clean, but not, and Conor was kind of rolling with the shot, so it wasn't that bad. His you know, his chin wasn't affected at all, and his chin is very rarely touched. So, you know, he'd be able to fight every week, you know.
And yeah, that is an amazing video, by the way. For anyone who hasn't seen it, check it out on Severe MMA of Owen speaking about a lot of things. Just wondering, because obviously UFC 205, it's not very far away. How long have you guys actually been training Conor specifically for this fight? Because you guys would have had sort of an inkling that Alvarez is going to be the guy that he's going to be facing. When did you sort of start training Conor?
Well, no, not, you know, it's kind of really been only confirmed. Conor's been just training the way he has been, or the way he always does. But now will be the 6 weeks out. Now will be, you know, specific to Alvarez. But, you know, I think Conor said it well as well. Alvarez does kind of fight to a lot of people that Conor's fought already. He kind of fights very similar in the regards that he's a grinder. He's, you know, he swings for the fences. He comes in, he likes to make it a dirty fight, and Conor's fought people like that before. So it's just trying to, you know, from my point of view, it's just trying to, you know, put some shots in there that we think are going to land, or try and walk Alvarez into the shots we want him to walk into, and then obviously, you know, avoiding the clinch as often as we can and getting off and landing those shots. But 6 weeks is more than enough time to do that.
Just quickly, was there any leg injury that was holding Conor back in training recently? Because as you would have heard, Dana White, before this fight was announced, said some stuff about Conor's foot or leg being hurt and him not being able to fight. Was there anything holding him back in training? Was there any truth to that?
No, nothing really. Like, Conor's leg is perfectly fine. So yeah, no. I mean, as I said, after the Diaz fight, he was back moving around within days, so he's good to go. Like, and we have 6 weeks now, so he'll be firing on all cylinders from now till the fight.
Talk to us about the actual training camp specifically, Owen, because Conor was sort of asked this at the press conference. They didn't really answer the question. How will the training camp be structured? Will it be set and precise like for Nate Diaz and at UFC 202, or will it sort of revert back to the old style where it was a bit more spontaneous?
No, I think it'll be similar to the Diaz, where everything will be a lot more structured. The type of cardio he'll be doing, he'll three or 4 days on, whatever cycle we decide to do, but everything will be structured to a T, and he'll have to stick to it. And I think seeing what he done in the last fight with Diaz, being able to go up that way, being able to go 5 rounds with a guy that's a lot heavier, that proved it worked. So, we don't need to change it. It doesn't need to be changed. Everything worked the last time around, so it'll work again this time.
All right. Well, Conor McGregor has said that he's been whooping that style for a long time. How do you compare Eddie to Conor's past opponents? And do you agree with Conor that he fits the mold of Conor's past opponents?
Yeah, I do in a sense. Now, Jesus, no disrespect to Alvarez. He's a great fighter and stuff, but. He does move similar to a lot of the people that Conor's fought, like, and even when Conor's fought strikers and stuff, they all become that type of fighter. When Conor lands, you become a panicked wrestler, like, and that's what's going to happen. Conor's very clean, and when it comes to a couple of exchanges, Alvarez is going to feel the difference in accuracy and the difference in power, and he will start to wrestle. And that's what they all do. So, I mean, Conor has fought that same type of person all his career. Alvarez is a great wrestler, so there is things that we'll be working on with Conor to make sure that Alvarez can't keep a hold of him, can't keep him, keep him against the fence. But, Conor's going to land, and it's just, I think it's going to be a matter of time before Alvarez goes to sleep, to be totally honest.
I mean, obviously Eddie has stated in past interviews that you mentioned the wrestling, that he's mentioned that wrestling is the easy path to victory against Conor, and how he gets frustrated when guys don't opt for that route against him. So, safe to assume that wrestling will be a big part of his game plan. Will there sort of be an added focus on wrestling and wrestling defense in this camp? And how do you see Conor overcoming that aspect of the fight, Owen?
Yeah, I definitely think, like, we've got really good wrestlers in the gym. Like, for the Mendes fight, we had Sergey Pakulski. He's a Moldovan national champion. He's the wrestling coach in SPJ, and Conor works with him non-stop every week. He does a couple of sessions with Sergey. It's just Sergey hasn't been in the picture because the Diaz fight, Sergey's a lot smaller, and the body type is totally different. We were expecting we're expecting a striking match with Diaz. That's what we obviously got. So we had different people in, but I'm sure Sergey will be involved in this camp. And there's a lot of small, stocky wrestlers in the gym, Eastern European guys that we will be utilising as well. So yeah, we have all the areas covered.
Well, Eddie at the press conference said to Conor that he doesn't have a shot, and that his coaches know that he doesn't have a shot, and anybody that knows about fighting knows it. What do you make of that one, of those comments that he made?
Yeah, I think he's trying to convince himself more so than anybody else that he has a shot. Like, at the end of the day, Conor's went in and proved it time and time again. You can say what you want, but the proof is in the pudding, and who's done what he's done. nobody, you know. But I think you can kind of see in Eddie's eyes, like from what I looked at, it looked like he was trying to convince himself more so than anybody else, you know. Now, at the end of the day, like anybody, when you're in there, I'm sure Eddie's going to give it his all, but I just don't think he has the skill set to beat Conor, to be totally honest.
Talk to us a bit more about that skill set, Owen, and just compare sort of Conor's striking compared to Eddie's striking. What do you sort of make of Eddie's striking? You mentioned before about how he likes to brawl and he really likes to swing for the fences. How do you sort of prepare, I guess, Conor for the striking of an Eddie Alvarez as opposed to Nate Diaz? What are you doing different in training? You know, what's the specific preparation? Is it speed, power, timing, volume?
Yeah, I just think it's, you know, in regards to Alvarez, like, he does swing for the fences, and he just be unstable at times and stuff like that. So, you know, it's just trying to capitalize on that and you know, getting out of the way of those big long shots and then putting the shots in straight afterwards. And I kind of, there's no better man in the game to do that, to be able to make him miss and fire the shots and land clean than Conor. There's nobody else in the game that does that. So we will just go over a few different, we'll go over some shots that we think are going to land, and then we'll go over some setups to put him in positions where we can land the shots that we always land, you know.
And Owen, we appreciate the time. Just a few more questions before we let you go.
Yeah, don't worry about it, man.
Okay, awesome. Well, this will be Conor's first fight back at lightweight in almost 3 years. Do you feel like this is the optimal weight class for him, and what improvements are you expecting to see?
This is for me. This is it. This is where you're going to see the best Conor McGregor. You know, I was talking to somebody else about this the other day. Fighting at welterweight, you know, it's hard for Conor to maintain his high output. For 25 minutes, you know, he's not a welterweight, you know, and he done it. He did it against, you know, one of the toughest fighters in the game, against Diaz, and you know, but it's just that's not his weight category. And then when the 145, yeah, he you know, he does a lot to get the weight off. He makes the weight perfect. But I don't know how much he's recovering in that 24 hours. You know, I can't imagine him getting back to 100% in that 24 hours when he fights at 145. And you see what he does at 145. But at 155, if you look at some of the fights, the Boochinger fighting Cage Warriors, he just looks so good at that way. He's, you know, that's the way he was, you know, he was supposed to be fighting at. And I think you'll see the fastest, the fittest, and you know, the sharpest, you know, in regards to his mind, the sharpest McGregor you'll ever see now at lightweight.
I feel like it's almost a homecoming for him. This is the weight class that everybody's been waiting to see him at and wanting to see him at. And I mean, I think also staying at 155, I mean, theoretically, you would assume that it would be tempting for him there because obviously, you know, his lifestyle changes. He can, I guess, eat a little bit more, not have to worry about that brutal cut to 145. Do you think he'll ever return back to featherweight, though?
You know what? I'm up in the air. I don't actually know, to be totally honest. You never know. Like, as I said, this you know, Conor kind of controls the way who he wants to fight and whatnot. The 145 weight category, I mean, I really don't know. Maybe if, as you said, if Edgar had to beat Aldo, then it would have been a more tempting fight. But the fact that he beat Aldo, you know, fairly, obviously in 13 seconds, it's not as tempting to go back down there. But who knows? Like, Conor could just turn around and say, look, I'm going to go back and do this. I'm going to go back and sort Aldo out, and he will, and he could do it. Like, he can definitely make that weight. You know, it is hard, it's difficult, but he can do it. And the last weight cut against Aldo was the best cut he's ever had to 145. Like, it was the best I'd ever seen. I mean, the comparison between that and the Mendes, you know, they were the difference. There was, you know, it was just a complete the Aldo weight cut was perfect, and he was in great form for the cut and everything. So he can do it, and the last one he's done was perfect, so he could do it again. But who knows? Who knows what's around the corner? I never know. That's what's so exciting about being part of Conor's team. You never know what's next. Like you really don't. Like after the DS fight, I was like, all right, well, we'll go back down and do Aldo, or we might do DS again, and then the Alvarez thing popped up, like, and now that's what we're doing. Now it's New York. It's crazy. It's exciting, and it's unbelievable. But that's the ride we're all on. We're kind of like, who knows where we're going next? You know, it's great.
Yeah, you guys will headline the first ever fight event on Mars one day out there in space. Yeah. But let's talk.
Two Martians, huh?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you'll have all the title belts in Mars as well. But let's quickly talk about the team, because you mentioned how you guys have had a great run. Now, we know you and John Kavanagh awfully have slightly different predictions to Conor and how his fights play out. You mentioned earlier on in this interview that you see Eddie Alvarez going down. But if you had to sort of predict on how it happens, do you sort of see a clear way in where he gets stopped? Yeah.
I always say I never really change my prediction, because I see what Conor does day in, day out in the gym. I see how clean his striking is, and I see how powerful he is. So I always give them the first, the second round, late in the first, because Conor needs to work out, you know, what shots are, when the shots are going to be available, and when to put them into play. But once he lands, it's a slippery slope. And although I said, you know, I knew Diaz was going to be tougher, but I still said, like, I know, like, I could see him, you know, finishing Diaz in the first or second. And we dropped Diaz 3 times in that first and second. Like, any other person is out. But you watch, it doesn't take him more than 2 rounds, you know. And I think 2 rounds is more than enough time for Conor to land clean. Wow. And once he lands clean, then it's a countdown. How long can the guy stay in there? Or how lucky can they be to get a hold of him and stall stall the clock? And I honestly think, like, Alvarez has been knocked out. He's been dropped a few times and stuff like that. So, I mean, that's not good knowing that when you're going into fight Conor McGregor. That, I mean, once if you've been dropped before and you're going in fighting Conor McGregor, there's a very, very high chance that you're going to be dropped again.
This is going to be a crazy, exciting fight. All right, Owen, just before we let you go, we really, really appreciate the time. Just quickly, you mentioned John Kavanagh and coaches. Just want to get your thoughts. What do you think about this idea that Kavanagh threw out there recently of a coach versus coach season of The Ultimate Fighter? Would you be interested in something like that?
I didn't even hear this yet. That would be awesome. Yeah, coach versus coach. Because, you know, people don't realize, like, a lot of these coaches in the game now, you know, are making their name off already bringing really high-level MMA fighters into their camp. They're already established fighters, and then they're piggybacking off them. Like, you watch them, any of the guys that came out from SPG were born and bred there. They came from nothing, no backgrounds. John built them all, you know, and that's what he's still doing to this day. So, you know, anyone questioning his coaching ability, they're insane, because, you know, he takes people like that have nothing, no striking, no grappling, nothing at all. From a day one beginner, he takes them to, you know, the highest level, the best in the game, you know. But coach versus coach would be very interesting to see, you know, what they do. Yeah, it would be a very exciting season, I think.
Yeah, well, let's have a little bit of fun here. Who would be on Team SBG? It would obviously be yourself, John Kavanagh, but who else would you throw on that team with you?
We've got a lot of good guys. We'd obviously have to have Sergey. We would have to have a couple of the maybe Arik, the very high level BJJ black belt as well. So we'd have a few there, but it would definitely be a great season to watch. So stick a word in, hopefully, and we can get that going, you know.
I gotta ask, because obviously the ratings would be big for this one. Would you secretly be hoping that it's Team SBG versus the coaching staff of Team Diaz in the finale?
Yeah, that would be pretty cool, man. We've had our run-ins with them, but that's a great. You know what? I can't wait till I'm 60, looking back on all of that crazy shit that went on. Like,
Yeah,
the two DS fights were just they were the business, man. To be totally honest, it was just mental. Like, but you can see the respect between Conor and Nate after both fights, like, you know what I mean. But yeah, crazy that the DS crew were all being mental, but it was a good buzz.
Well, there you guys have it. Coach Rowdy Owen Roddy. You can catch him on Twitter at Rowdy Owen Roddy. He also has great vlogs on YouTube at SBG Charleston. They give you a great behind-the-scene look. Actually, you had some really good ones, Owen, and I'm surprised more people didn't take notice. We were sort of in the media room showing everybody to make sure they got their head across it. I'm sure you'll have one for UFC 205, so we look forward to that. And if you guys would like to train with him, get on down to SBG Charleston, where he teaches the classes and shares his wealth of knowledge. I mean, how could you miss out on that, guys? Owen, thank you so much for your time today. It went a little bit longer than we thought, but we really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on the program.
No, great fun, lads. Anytime. Cheers.
Hi guys, it's Jana Jędrzejczyk, UFC strawweight champion. Listen to Submission Radio.
All right, guys, our next guest headlines Tough Latin America 3 finale this November against former lightweight champion Rafael dos Anjos. It's a pleasure to welcome back Tony Ferguson to Submission Radio. Tony, welcome to the program.
Thank you guys for having me, man. Super amped about this. November 5th can't get here anytime soon, man.
We are very excited. This is going to be a great matchup. Just before we get into it, and let's be honest, there's a lot to talk about because a lot's happened in the past week. What has been new with you, man? Because we go on your Instagram, we go on your Twitter, and you're going full Bob the Builder. You're building some kind of facility. Is that correct?
Yeah, I decided to just kind of say screw the labels and do my own thing, man. And I built my fortress. It's basically Camp Kukui. We're out here in Big Bear Mountain Lake, and we're way past, just sea level elevation. We're here acclimating, and there's no joke, no bullshit about it. We're training hard, and my squad is we're doing work with me and making sure that I'm going to be out of here with that victory, man.
Wow, I mean, you've never had any cardio issues, but your cardio is going to be amazing now that you're at altitude. I'm just wondering, why make that decision? You're obviously in a gym previously. Why did you decide to branch out, especially now that you've sort of got this big task in building this gym in the middle of a training camp?
Because this is my academy. This is me setting myself apart from everybody and all the gyms and all the trainers that try to claim me. This is my stuff. This is my show and my time. This is my show, man. With the 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu Eddie Bravo coming up here and making sure my drills are here and my squad and making sure that my Muay Thai is on point, my boxing, and putting the right key people in the places. My academy is not just new. This thing is just I've been moving my academy, man. Because my academy is me and the people that I surround myself with. You know, I don't belong to big name gyms and I don't belong to big name teams because a lot of them slow me down. They just can't hang. You know, or they don't have that tempo that I have, or they just have too much of an ego. So I got to separate myself from that and build myself around strong-minded type of individuals and put myself in harm's way and to be able to overcome adversity. And that's going to make me that much stronger. So that's why I did it over here in Big Bear Lake, because nobody's here bothering me. I'm barely on Instagram, and the only thing I'm doing is busting my ass and puking almost every day trying to do this shit out here. This is grindy stuff, man. This is back in the 80s or way back in the day. People forgot how to train like this. I'm bringing it back. That's Snapdown City Academy. That's Tony Ferguson. That's my stuff, and that's what we're doing up here.
I love the Snapdown City Academy. It kind of reminds us, obviously, Brock Lesnar's Suplex City, and obviously you are an alum of...
Well, what do you think about Suplex City?
And so this is your take on it, Snapdown City.
After I snapped down T-Bow, I'm going to tell you straight out, after I snapped down T-Bow, Suplex City came out of the woodwork. I'm not saying I wanted to squash him a little, man, but look, I'm not here to bow down. Snapdown City is where it started. Suplex City is an affiliate of Snapdown City. They're fucking lucky, dude.
all you need is Brock Lesnar coming down every now and then and making appearances. But you mentioned, Tony, about you want to stay away from labels and you don't want trainers claiming you. What exactly do you mean by that? And was there sort of any instance in particular that you sort of drawing from
even
there?
Just with sponsors in general and just the man. Stick it to the man is what you say, right?
Mm.
You know, like for me, I'm not wearing labels right now. I got a Reebok shirt on, but that's because I ran out of stuff to wear. You know, I have my brand. You know, it's Tony Ferguson MMA, and it's Snap Jitsu. You know, my trademark, everything's going through it. I'm really trying to brand myself, and I'm tired of other sponsors that play games. And I'm not here to play games. It's like I have my sponsors that have been riding with me since the beginning, and those are the sponsors I'm riding with. For everybody else, when they want to try to jump on, it's too late. I'm moving forward, bro, and everybody else that's in the way trying to get at 155 or Conor and Alvarez or Khabib and whoever else you want. Honestly, I don't give a shit anymore. I'm so damn focused, it doesn't matter who they put in front of me. Because I'm going to succeed on my way to victory come November 5th. It's doomsday for Dos Santos.
Yeah, it's going to be a huge, huge fight. You mentioned exciting times. You mentioned you don't give a shit, but, you know, the listeners want to know your thoughts on what happened this week in the lightweight division. I mean, two things happened that we want to ask you about before we get to your fight. The first one is this Conor McGregor, Eddie Alvarez fight. What was your reaction when you found out he'd be fighting for the lightweight belt? Were you happy with it because you're close to getting a title shot? You could potentially be fighting him next. Were you annoyed with it because
all
he sort
the
of
whiny
skipped the
bitches
queue?
can fight over the belt. When I get to that spot, they better, like, seriously recycle that belt because so many damn filthy hands have been on it. Seriously, I'm the only one that's been earning this shit on this division. You can talk your way to the division and you can sit out for the longest time and try to wait for a title shot. I've been earning my way up the whole entire time, taking great fights, taking moderate fights, but no matter what, coming out with finishes. No matter what, I'm a very entertaining fighter. I might not be as savvy on that side, but it's because I choose not to because I don't like the spot. I've been in that side for the Ultimate Fighter. Now I enjoy my family time, my kids growing up, and I enjoy rebuilding and doing construction. So for me, when I heard the news, I didn't give a shit personally because either way, that's more fun for me because that's more asses to whoop and for more fans to watch. So welcome to the family if you really want to be in this Shark Tank. Because I'm the only hammerhead in this division, man. I'm tired of it. All these other little dudes, man, they're a bunch of pansies. They need to stop dressing up in suits and worry about the labels and money and stuff like that and realize what really fighting is about. That's pride and doing your best and worry about the other bullshit. I'm tired of it, man. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing here. And that's why you barely see me posting on Instagram anymore.
Well, that's a very good point, because when we looked on your Instagram, there's not as much as there used to be. I'm wondering, because when a lot of people see Conor McGregor sort of coming into their division, they get excited because they see dollar signs. They think, all right, money fights. But I get this vibe from you that it's not really something that's important to you. Is that something in the back of your mind, thinking that, you know, if you do get that title shot with a win over RDA, that this could potentially be a big money fight and you'll make a lot, or is that not really important to you?
It's not really important to me, dude. Like I'm happy right now, and I'm not settling. I'm steadily building. This is a marathon, not a sprint. A lot of those dudes that shoot to the top, it's almost like fighting with a game genie, dude. You kind of like cheat your way up there, and then you know when you win there, you kind of realize, oh shit, all right, it's not the same kind of win. It's kind of funny, like when you win like that much money into this stuff, it's kind of funny because do you have that same kind of passion for the sport anymore? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, there's hardships. Fighting is about hardships, man. It's about fighting life. Fighting, you know, and overcoming a bunch of adversity. When you get there so fast, it's kind of like, oh, shit, okay, all right, next. And for me, like, I'm taking my time, dude, and I told you, when I get to that title shot, I'm going to be the first one to hold on to it like 3 to 4 times. That shit ain't going nowhere. And then I retire with my gloves in that middle of that ring.
Yeah, well,
So
do you
guys want to fight for that belt and do all that stuff? And it's cool, man. I'm not hating on it. It's cool. That's them. But for me, you guys are going to get an amazing show. Like, I'm preparing, and I'm like, I went to the rabbit hole, bro, the warp zone, and I'm in like the hyperbaric time chamber right now. Weight vest, weight ankles, running around, doing 6 miles, pulling tires, doing shit that's crazy, dude. And not even thinking twice about it and waking up the next day and doing it again.
Wow, that sounds crazy. And we have to talk about the training in just a second, but I get a feeling from you, Tony, that you don't think Eddie Alvarez is going to hold on to his title at UFC 205.
Honestly, I hope they both knock each other out. Because it'd be kind of cool. I haven't seen a double KO in a while. I just hope it's a good fight. You know, a lot of shit talking, a lot of hype and stuff. I just hope it's much more than one round. Give the crowd a fight. Give them something that everybody wants to see, which is a good bloody war.
You're fighting 1 week before that on November 5th. Their fight takes place on November 12th. A win over RDA, where do you think that puts you in the division? Because you kind of sound like you're enjoying this journey. Would you expect to be the next one in line after RDA?
Depends on how I finish. If I finish like Barbosa, yes. If I finish like Vannata, no. So It's all about spectacular presence inside that octagon, man. You know, I'm an entertainer, and I aim to please when I go inside there, and the only one I aim to please is myself, which is coming out there and making sure that I got to come out of there flawless victory this time. And with the RDA victory that's like that, it'll put me in title contention. That's no doubt in my mind.
You mentioned Vannata. I just want to touch on that fight with you just quickly, Tony. It was obviously a good victory, but there were a couple of hardships in the fight early on. It's been a while since that fight has happened. How do you look back on that performance, and how do you look back on that fight?
Well, I shouldn't have gave the kid a shot. You know, I shouldn't have even fought even Chesa. Those dudes didn't even deserve to be in the same octagon as me. They didn't put any of the time or energy or the mailroom experience that I did. So, should that fight have happened? No. But did I want the Sioux Falls people to get a fight? Yes. So instead of punking out and saying, you know what, like pulling an Alvarez or Khabib, I actually stuck with the program, and I stayed in it. And, you know, it was a tempo change. We prepared for Micheal Johnson and Khabib, both solid grapplers. Now, once I got a hold of Vannata, it was over. Now, in the first round, I mean, there was a big tempo change, and we didn't really practice standing up. I didn't want to show too much, so we stuck with the jab and the basics. He did get me a couple times, but if you really go back and you watch the film, there was a bunch of times where I slipped, boom, and he took a nasty shot, but I recovered very well. And that resulted to my 10th round jiu-jitsu, and that dude's lucky. He's super lucky that I took it easy on him, because I was about 70% squeeze. And I didn't want to hurt the kid, man. The kid was young. He had a lot of stuff going for him, and I'm glad that he came out with a performance of the night victory to add up to his college fund.
How happy are you getting RDA as your next opponent? Because for a long time, you've been on this great streak and you've been fighting tough guys, but a lot of the fans sort of wanted to see you get that top 5, top 4 guy and really sort of make that big jump into title contention. Are you happy that you're fighting, you know, one of the toughest guys in the division? Not only that, but the guy who last held the title belt.
Yeah, absolutely. This is like a title fight. This is a 5-round title fight in my mind. And you got to prepare for it every single fight. And my last fight, I'll tell you, I had a lot of things going on. I had a couple of deaths in the family. I bought a house, had a kid. You know, there's just a lot of things going on. I was pretty busy. But I overcame that. And I'm very focused now. And RDA and I, we don't really have too much beef, but what we both know is we're going to train hard. And what he knows is I'm going to train harder than him. So that can be in the back of his mind. And my weight is good. My mental is clear. And all is gravy over here in Big Bear Lake.
RDA, I mean, he's a great fighter. So many people fans of his work. Before we talk about this matchup, did you want Khabib over RDA, or was he your preferred matchup?
It didn't matter, honestly. It doesn't matter. Because anytime that I go after any of these dudes, whoever's next is going to be next. I'm not going to save them or rob them of an ass whooping. I'm not. I'm to that point, and I said that when I was in my interview, when Khabib was there, and even Pettis. But now these guys are jumping shit, man. You got Cerrone jumping up the weight class from all the shit that we talked. And then you got Anthony Pettis, same thing. He jumped down a weight class from all the shit that he talked. So it's like, no matter what, I'm going to fight any of these guys. It doesn't matter. But right now it's RDA, and he's going to give me the best fight that anybody's ever seen, because that's what I expect from him. Because if he does, I'm going to be so disappointed, and you know what? The next guy's going to get even worse. So I'm sharpening up my elbows. My kicks are smooth and hard, bro. I'm kicking sandbags, and you would not believe. I'm training like straight up just Iron Man type of training out here. And there's nobody that's going to beat me, man. They can do whatever they want. They can say whatever they want. But I'm on a different pathway, and that's finishing people. So RDA's next, UFC Mexico City. You know, follow me on my way to victory at Tony Ferguson XT.
Talk to us about how you match up against RDA, just stylistically. Obviously, we know you're a good grappler. You're one of the most exciting strikers and fighters in general in the division. Compare sort of your skill set to his, and I'm wondering, the loss to Eddie Alvarez, do you think that will be a factor in the fight at all? Do you think that'll affect him in any way?
Oh, of course. RDA is one of those dudes that learns from his, mistakes. But I'm a power puncher, and Alvarez doesn't hit harder than me at all, and I'm very precise. And I'm very accurate with all of my strikes, and I just see being too fast and too slick for RDA. I don't see him beating me in any way. I'm doing every single day, going over and over every kind of position I think that he's going to present to me, and I'm going over it, and I'm playing chess. I'm writing my stuff down. I'm looking at him. I'm watching his film. I'm picking him apart. I'm getting ready for this, like it's a state championship or a national championship or a world championship, because that's how it feels. You know, maybe if I was so up in the hype, I would have something more creative to say. But I've been here in the woods, in the sticks, longboarding, you know, doing downhill longboards to clear my head, you know, just to chill out, you know, recovering, taking ice baths, doing all the stuff that people forget. And that's how I know I'm going to win. So I am patient. I'm not in any rush. So with this fight, hopefully you guys, it's a free fight. It should be on pay-per-view. I'm pissed that it's not pay-per-view, but it is on live TV. And you guys set your DVRs, man, and make sure, because the whole lineup is going to be badass. You guys really need to check it out.
No, for sure. And I'm sure everybody will. I mean, this is a fight that a lot of people are really, really looking forward to. Talk to us about fighting over there as opposed to in America. Are you excited to go over, be able to fight over there? Is there added pressure with the fact that, you know, you're away from home and people are expecting a lot from you?
Well, I don't think there's pressure at all. You know, for me, I strive on pressure. But when I went to Mexico City, the one thing I realized was the acclimation process. I knew that I was going to have to get acclimated because, you know, it's just obviously the elevation. But I didn't want to take a chance in just to kind of like BS it, because you can't BS conditioning. And for me, that's the one thing I don't do. But for Mexico City, the people are amazing. The food is great. The location where the fight's going to be is awesome, beautiful. It's kind of like one of those places where you have to take your sunglasses off and actually enjoy it. Because I wear my sunglasses all the time. But it was one of those things that I got to enjoy, man. It was cool. You know, I'm Mexican, and, you know, that blood flows right through me. So it was cool to be able to go and chill, check it out, see all the locations, and to be a part of it. And I'm blessed and honored to be able to be the main event. And I know I'm going to come out that finish and give everybody a good show.
Yeah. No, it's gonna be great. And before we get your prediction for the fight, just a couple last questions. We mentioned Khabib before. He'll be fighting in UFC 205 against Micheal Johnson. I know you're not really focused on anything outside your fight, but the fans really want to know, what are your thoughts on him being on that card and getting that matchup? And are you worried at all that he gets the next title shot if he beats Micheal Johnson at UFC 205?
I think it's a good fight. I'm glad that they gave him Micheal Johnson. They're going to see how crappy Khabib's stand-up is. I think Mike's going to eat up his leg. I mean, I fought Micheal Johnson, but if we were to fight again, I would tear him up. And, you know, when I fought him, I didn't really know Muay Thai. And to fight Micheal Johnson, you got to know Muay Thai, or at least I know how to check. And I don't see Khabib doing that with Horcher when he fought him. I seen him get hit a couple of times. Obviously, you know, I can't say too much for myself in my case. But I just see Micheal Johnson proposing too much of a threat, bro. I mean, just way too much. You know, if with him and Henry Hoof and the guys at Black Zillions, you know, they're able to just pick him apart, because that dude's one-dimensional, man. And if Khabib gets a hold of him, I think Mike's going to have too much scramble, so I think Mike's going to have that victory.
I'm wondering, obviously you mentioned the loss to Micheal Johnson. You seem to be sort of enjoying this journey that you're on, just, you know, taking out contenders left, right, and center. If you, assuming all goes well, you beat RDA, would you be open to a potential rematch with Micheal Johnson before a title shot, or would you rather go ahead with a title shot first?
That's between myself and my management, you know? I mean, honestly, this is a business and it's a business game. I know a lot of people would love to see that fight. If the money's right, it'd be all right, you know? I mean, but I don't plan on going backwards. I know if you ask these guys if they want to fight me again, they're going to tell you no. Seriously. They've seen the boogeyman. They don't want that shit. They're trying to win back and try to avoid me as much as they can. So if it does happen, it does. But those guys that fought me once, man, I knocked Micheal Johnson on his ass with my broken arm. I'm tough as nails, dude. And I just don't see those dudes beat me again.
All right, well, before we let you go, Tony, we want to get a prediction from you. How do you see yourself beating Rafael dos Anjos at the Ultimate Fighter Latin American 3 finale? Give us what you see happens in your mind.
I'm going to snap his ass down. I'm going to put him in Snap Down City, and I'm going to get him so lost in that place that he has no idea, and I'm going to choke him out. That's going to come after a barrage of strikes. I'm going to hit that nose, make his eyes water, and make him shoot. Happens with everybody. And once he does, I'm going to cut him up with my elbows. I'm going to stuff some knees in there. He tries to take me down. I'll put him in 10th Planet territory, and it's over for RDA.
Wow, exciting stuff. I cannot wait for this fight, guys. Don't forget to check out Tony Ferguson on Twitter at TonyFergusonXT, like you mentioned before, and of course on Instagram as well, Tony Ferguson XT. He's got a lot of updates, a lot of great pictures of this facility. And just curious, Tony, are you accepting people at this facility? Can people come down and train, or is this purely for you and sort of surrounded for you and your training?
This is for me and my training crew. This is strictly private facility. It's invite only. And, we have next week, we have the UFC coming out to come and film and stuff. But it is a strictly private facility, man. But keep posting on my Instagram or keep watching. I'm going to post up another video today and of the rest of the grounds and what comes some of the stuff that we've been doing. It's pretty intriguing, man. It's pretty awesome, and I hope you guys enjoy it.
I love it. This is like a very elite club. Thank you so much for your time, Tony. We really appreciate it, and good luck on November 5th.
Hey, thank you, guys. Host.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Micheal Johnson, the UFC Flyweight Champion of the World, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys, we have a bit of fun here for you on Submission Radio. This man caused a stir this week at the UFC 205 press conference. His name is Matt Morea, but he's now affectionately known as the Thai guy in the MMA community. He joins us here on Submission Radio to talk about that crazy moment that got the fans in arms. Matt, welcome to Submission Radio.
Thanks, guys. How you guys doing tonight?
Well, we're doing very, very well. Thanks for joining us. Now, let's get right into it because people are asking us, everybody's all abuzz about how this thing exactly happened. So take us into the scene. Explain how this all came together. What was your plan going into this press conference? How did you get in there? Were you actually a credentialed media member?
So I wasn't aware that the press conference, because I've been a fan of the UFC and of mixed martial arts I'm fairly new, for about 3.5 years or so. And the press conferences I've watched in the past, I've seen fans asking questions like in the way up in the stands and stuff sometimes, sometimes during the Q&A. So I just figured this was going to be, fans were going to be able to ask questions. So I'm going in there thinking that it's going to be open to the fans. Now, I had my work, I had a tie on shirt because I came from work, got off of work to be able to attend. And so I didn't have a plan at all. Once I realized that it was just press, I was like, oh, wow, bummer. And then when Dana said, hey, last question, it was just in my, I just stuck my hand up, didn't think anything of it. And I've had a question I've been wanting to ask Eddie because ever since I've heard his comments about McGregor not being a championship fighter, et cetera. So then I just wanted to ask the question, but it came out to be this whole thing that I totally did not expect, prepare for, plan, and here we are. Now I'm doing interviews with Submission Radio and other podcasts and MMA news networks and stuff. So it's been great. It's been a great 72 hours, I'll tell you that.
Wow, this is crazy. So I'm just wondering, talk to us about that question as far as you having it sort of loaded for a while. Obviously, you didn't expect the opportunity to ask it. What did you think? What was going through your mind where you sort of made it, you'd Ocean 11'd it, and you'd sort of been, got the opportunity to ask that question?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I was just annoyed about his comments after the second rematch with Nate Diaz against Conor. I think he mentioned Nate Diaz as well in the same category as not being a 5-rounder or something like that. And so, but he's talked about Conor not being a championship fighter. He gasses out, blah, blah, blah. He's not he doesn't, and this guy just became a world champion in UFC. So I'm thinking like, come on. Now, I know he's been a professional career in other organizations and successful and a world champion as well. So I looked it up on Wikipedia weeks ago, and I saw his record of 2 5-round fights he has completed. And obviously I was a little misquoted on my fact because my phone died, and I couldn't check it at the time, even when I was at the press conference. So I just went off of memory from weeks ago, and I just said you lost one of them. But, it was a split decision. And that was his last 5-rounder. Meanwhile, Conor's last 5-rounder was a majority decision, and he wrecked the dude. So the thing is that what warrants Eddie Alvarez to be able to smack talk against Conor's experience when he barely has a massive 5-round war record? You know what I'm saying? Like, I can understand if it was Robbie Lawler saying it. I can understand if it was John Jones, or I can understand if it was even Jose Aldo, Frankie Edgar. But coming from Eddie Alvarez, I just didn't sit well with me, and so didn't think I was going to get the opportunity, and I was glad I had the opportunity, but you can kind of see the passion in my question at the end.
Oh, yeah, we can see it. The way you started off all professional and then really turned up the volume.
Yeah, and you know what I liked about you, Matt, was he sort of didn't hear the question properly the first time, and a lot of people get frazzled when you have to repeat the question. You did a good job, but let's talk about the aftermath. I mean, we saw those security guards there. There was one of the UFC PR people. Talk to us exactly what happened after you asked that question. Were you asked to leave? Did anybody have words with you? Did the UFC people say anything? Or were you able just to slip out of there like George Clooney on the Ocean's 11 gang at the end of the movie where they're looking at the fountain?
So here's the funny thing. So you're talking about the first time or the second time they came to me?
They came to you twice.
Yeah, so the first time, right? I think because I think I was getting closer to Eddie. I was like, I was getting in the moment, and I was like, listen, Conor's got my back, so I'm gonna go right to his face. But no, I mean, I really wasn't gonna do that. But I would think I was just getting in the moment, and the security guard just wanted to, make sure I wasn't gonna be a lunatic, and I wasn't going, So he told me to go back out and sit back in where the fans were. Then Eddie's asking me to repeat the question. So I said no. He's asking me to repeat my question. So I grabbed the mic back. I repeated the question in the heat of the moment. Conor, snubs it, takes it, and takes off with it, and makes it $1 million. And the second time, they just told me, listen, you got to sit down. So what I did is I sat down in the press section.
Wow.
The whole time, and I just sat there. They didn't tell me to leave, nothing like that. I think they saw the response, and I think they weren't about to do that. I think they were, people wouldn't have been unhappy for rejecting me for that or something. But again, and I was unknown that it was not open to the fans at first. And so once he picked me, I was like, oh, all right, here we go. So that's what happened. The security asked me to back up, sit back down. I did. And then I asked the question again. He told me to sit down and back up again. And then, a couple times, but he never told me to leave. And he barely even used any force. He was very gentle. Nice guy.
I think the UFC security, they saw the value that you brought to the event, and they thought, we can't get rid of this guy. I think the moral of the story, if anybody listening, is anytime you go to a press conference, you need to wear a tie and a nice shirt. I think the standard for clothing and fashion sense in general at these things is going to skyrocket now, thanks to you, Matt.
Hey,
As we let you go, man.
Listen, this is the the greatest fight organization on the planet right now. And why not step it up a little bit? Conor stepped it up for the fighters. Look at all the fighters now trying to dress like him. And, kudos to him for that. So, and it's funny because at my job, everybody, when it gets hot, they want to take their ties off. I'm always keeping my tie on. They're like, aren't you suffocating? I was like, no, it doesn't bother me. It looks good. It looks professional. You have, especially in the business I do. So so yeah, that was a fun moment. And I would definitely do it over again.
I'm with you, man. We love suiting up here at Submission Radio. You're like the Conor McGregor of the people, right? You're stepping the game up. Everyone's going to be wearing tuxedos from now on at these press conferences. Got to ask you, as we let you go, Matt, what is the official prediction? You've sort of broken it down. How do you see this fight, I guess, ending at UFC 205? And you'll be there, right? You've got tickets?
I did not. I do not have tickets yet, but I have been pleading with those in the UFC, including Dana and Conor, including his girlfriend, his coach, trying to see if they'll let me walk McGregor out to represent New York City. I know that's a hard and high request, but I figured I'll land on something by requesting the highest thing, and I figured that would be the greatest thing to do. But if anything, at least to be in attendance, I would love to be. So I have not received any tickets, any word. I did mention to them if I can, grab a couple maybe, but we'll see what Dana, or we'll see if it even gets to him and if he even acknowledges anything. But I think it would be great. I think the fans would love it. I have a huge social media boom right now, and that is basically giving me a huge following. Sorry about that. I had to do something. So yeah. My prediction for the fight is early night, very early night. I think Alvarez has Conor's in his head already. You can see the way he was trying to act in his face when Conor was in the face-off. He was doing clowns. I mean, come on, Anyhow, the point is that it's going to be an early night for Alvarez. I think I see a one-round KO, not late into the first round. I'd be surprised if Eddie actually survives the first round the way he fites and the way Conor fights. And Conor only gets better and sharper, so it's just going to be a matter of time. And and the last time he was at 155, it's going to be a remarkable performance, and I think it's going to be an early night for Eddie Alvarez.
Are you worried there? What if Eddie wins? Do you think he'll be one of the first people he finds to sort of glide over if he does beat Conor McGregor? He'll sort of find you out if you do make it to the corner and maybe request your tie. Maybe you should put your tie on the line. Whoever wins the tie. But let me just quickly ask you, because we're running out of time. If when this event happens, there's going to be open workouts, there's going to be other different press things. Are you going to try and make it down to those things? Are you going to try and wear the tie down to the open workout? For example, we saw the Overeem heckler over there at UFC 203. Are you going to follow Eddie around and sort of really get into his head going into this fight?
That's actually interesting. I was planning on going to the media workouts, media day, and all the press stuff, weigh-ins, of course. But what you just put an idea in my head. Yeah, I think I will do that if I can. Absolutely. I will haunt him with the tie forever until he comes November 12th and goes to bed and sleeps well on that octagon canvas.
Wow, how's that for a prediction? I mean, you're essentially going to classically condition him to loathe and fear ties so that every time he sees a tie, he's going to think of you and freak out. But Matt, we really appreciate you taking the time. We really appreciate you sort of uncovering the story and giving the listeners a bit of a, I guess, preview and insight as to who you are, man. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you so much for making the 205 press conference even more fun than it already was. And I guess we'll be seeing you in New York, right?
Yeah, let the listeners know, how can they get behind the tie guy? What's your social media? How can they follow you? How can the people get you some tickets or get you walking out in Conor McGregor's camp in this event? What can they do?
So my Twitter handle is MP Morea, my last name Morea, and you'll see tie guy in parentheses. You'll also see my avatar from the event, the presser. My Instagram is xman_p, and my Facebook is Matt Morea. You'll also see parentheses tie guy. And I also work in Yonkers, New York, selling Jeeps. So if anybody wants a Jeep and wants to say hi, come by there and see me there or drop the tickets off there. I'm not far from MSG, that's for sure.
Wow, there you go, guys. Matt, thanks for coming on the program. We look forward to hopefully seeing you around the event. Guys, we'll be right back right after this.
Hey guys, it's Stephen Miocic, UFC heavyweight champion, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys. Our next guest has trained and cornered some of the biggest names in MMA, including Tito Ortiz, BJ Penn, Vitor Belfort, Michael Bisping, and Chris Cyborg. He will, of course, be in the corner of Michael Bisping when he takes on Dan Henderson at UFC 204, and is also one of the most down-to-earth people we've ever had the pleasure of having on the show. Jason Parillo, welcome back to Submission Radio, man. It's good to chat again.
Hey, guys. Thank you for saying down to earth. That was a nice little compliment. I appreciate it. How you guys doing? You guys are good?
Yeah, we're doing real well. And look, it's an exciting time to be an MMA fan, and you're a big part of that. I mean, Jason Parillo, the name has been flying around the internet and through MMA communities because of the huge success that your fighters have had over the past year. We have to ask you, Jason, how has your life changed over the last year or so? Because in 2016 alone, it almost seems like it's the year of Jason Parillo. You've got Michael Bisping winning UFC gold, Chris Cyborg making a UFC debut and continuing her path of destruction. We feel like your stock in general is at an all-time high. How are you enjoying this ride that you're on at the moment?
Well, you know, I'd love to say it's completely changed my. I mean, not that it hasn't changed my life. It's changed my life in a positive way. I get to, you know, the victories are way better than the losses, aren't they? And obviously titles are huge. But I'm always in the gym, man. I'm always training. I you know, if these guys aren't fighting, there's somebody else fighting. So I'm in the gym, you know, plugging away. But you know, obviously, you know, it's a great feeling. I mean, it's a wonderful feeling to get acknowledgement for the work that I put in my whole life, you know, and seeing these fighters, you know, developing over the course of time that I've been with them and their skills and whatever we've been developing is coming to play in the fights, and we've been successful. So, you know, I'm real happy about it. I guess to answer your question.
Yeah, you got a lot of reasons.
I did not want to change. My life's going to be the same no matter what. I could have 10 world champions and be living the same life, just a little busier, a little bit more tired, a little bit more maybe impatient because I'm busier. But other than that, you know, we're just going to keep plugging away with these fighters.
Yeah, well, let's talk about some of those fighters, all right? Chris Cyborg, there's a lot to talk about with you, Jason, so we'll start with Chris. I mean, the other weekend saw another great performance for her, but once again, brutal weight cut down to 140 for an opponent that, you know, really wouldn't be classified as a super fight at all. A lot of people are saying enough's enough, let Chris fight at 145 and just bring in a women's featherweight division already. Where do you stand on this?
Well, I've always agreed with that. I've always said that. I don't know if we had talked about this before on the show, but I've always been, you know, very stubborn about the idea of Chris going down in weight because I've seen those weight cuts are brutal at 145. I mean, they're just as tormenting. They're just as, you know, they're really an emotional roller coaster, and it's a lot of weight she drops to get to 145. And, you know, and when we use the term super fight, and there being no 145-pound division, there's not a 140-pound division either, you know. So Well, what's the difference? Even if you're going to keep on, having these super fights, I mean, what's the harm in making 145 pound? Because there's not. I mean, obviously the division exists in Invicta and obviously in the guys league. But I've always said it. Build it, they'll come. I mean, if she goes out, you put Chris Cyborg out 145 pounds, she will create a division. She will. I mean, Ronda Rousey did it, and I think she's the same type of spirit. I mean, same type of star. She will draw the bigger fighters. I mean, there's girls out there that want a 145 pound class. There's bigger girls. There's a class in Invicta with a lot of fighters in Invicta. I mean, I don't see what the harm is. I think it's a way to go. It's what I like to see her do. I don't want to, how can I put it? This is her career. She's going to make the choice that she wants to do. And at the end of the day, I know she wants that 145 pound weight class. I want that 145 pound weight class. I believe the fans want that 145 pound weight class. So it would be nice to think that there'd be some type of opening to it, but from what I understand, it's not even a thought of opening on that class.
Yeah, Dana White says there's not enough female fighters to fill it, but like he's mentioned, there's so many ways to go about it. What do you think about this weight cut, though? Because a lot of people are concerned that we're not really even seeing Chris's full potential, and that if the fight goes past the second round, the weight cut becomes a major, major problem for her because it can affect her performance. From a coach's perspective, do you worry about that? I mean, there's the health perspective, but also the perspective of having to perform after going literally through hell trying to make that weight.
No, exactly. That's my biggest fear. I mean, health-wise, I mean, of course, but it's how you're going to perform. I mean, she can keep her strength. I mean, she's so strong compared to these girls, and it's obviously the biggest fear about it. I mean, your chin's not the same when you have a brutal weight cut like that. Your power's not the same. Your conditioning's not the same. There's a lot of things that aren't the same, and it opens up a lot of doors for the other girl to capitalize on. And that brutal weight cut, Chris performed obviously at the level that she performs at. She's a beast. She's a champion. She's a fighter. She lives, breathes, eats fighting. That's all she does. But that's been my biggest fear is going down to 140. I want 145. I want to, and I think the fans and everybody deserves, they're paying money to watch her fight, to see her fight at her 100%, ability. And we don't want to go out and see a shell of herself. We go out and see Chris Cyborg. She's a shell of herself. She goes in, she gets in a tough fight, and the factor is because she had a brutal weight cut, it doesn't make sense to me.
I'm wondering, Jason, obviously these are concerns that you have. Have you spoken to Chris about these? And I'm wondering what those conversations are like. Have you ever said to her, look, I really don't think you should be doing this fight at 140? And I'm wondering what that dialogue is sort of like.
Well, it went a long time before she even was in the UFC. Like we were always talking about trying to get her down to 135, and I was obviously thoroughly against that. And we've had conversations in the past. And I told her back in the day, I'm like, look, you truly are something special. She is a special. She, you could look at the I mean, she's second fight in the UFC. She's a main event. And there was a hell of a lot of views on that fight, and a lot of people watch it. A lot of people are talking about Chris Cyborg as well. She's a special fighter, and I told her to keep plugging away, and she's people are going to know who she is. They know who she is now. I mean, fortunately, she got put on the big stage of the UFC. And I tell her all the time, and she, and like I said, these fighters are going to make their own decisions. And I guess depending on the money and depending on the situation, we're going to make the decision. And she felt, it's funny because we all forget pain. We all forget the suffering that we did. You forget what it felt like. You forget. It amazes me sometimes. A lot of these fighters, they forget. They forget. A month goes by after that fight. They're feeling good. They're living life, high on the hog. They're having a good time. And they remember they did make the weight, but they didn't remember the sacrifice and the suffering they did to get there and how scary it was. So that's pretty much I remind her of it. I said, look, you want to do 140 again. You remember how it was. You remember said you didn't want to go to 140 again. You remember I said, I know, but, and she gets, you bring in a high-level nutritionist like George Lockhart, and, so I know with that being done, she's at least monitored. She's at least under, we'll say a professional's care in a sense. He's watching what she's doing. He's obviously educated on what he's doing, and so it's at least a safer route to go. And I know that she's not going to, she wants to get in there, and she wants those big fights with all the big names that have been in the UFC, and she's, willing to, I've always said it, Cyborg will cut off her hand if she has to make weight, and I love the attitude, but at the same time, I'm always trying to look out for her best interests, and I will speak my mind and give my advice and my thoughts on it. And it ends up being up to them to take it. And if they did, and I'm not the type of guy that says, you didn't listen to me, go fuck yourself. I mean, I end up caring about these athletes and these fighters that I spend a lot of time with. And I want to be there regardless. If they make that decision and they're going to go into that battle, I mean, I end up going in there with them, regardless, because, I want to make sure I'm looking out for their best interests and have their back.
Well, that's why you're such a good man, Jason, and have had so much success with your fighters. Let me ask you this, though. Dana White has claimed recently that Ronda Rousey 100% wants Chris next. What do you make of that, and do you buy into those rumors?
That would be amazing. I mean, and I just said this the other day. I mean, the only way we'll see, if we see Ronda Rousey come back, it's because she's willing to fight Chris Cyborg. Because she knows she can't step in the octagon, whether it's her first fight or second fight or 10th fight when she comes back in. She knows as soon as she makes the decision to be a fighter again, everybody's gonna be talking about Chris Cyborg. I would love to see that fight happen. The problem obviously would go down to the weight again. Unless they were to make a super fight at 140, which Chris has made now twice, and I know she did 141 in this last one, but I'd love to see. And I said this the other day, you don't know. I mean, Ronda's disappeared. She's not around, and actions speak louder than words. And you'd have to. It's a guessing game, and I said this again before. It's a guessing game. Obviously that's a super fight. That's the biggest fight in female mixed martial arts, and I know everybody would like to see it, and I would like to see it. I'd like to help Chris win that fight, because I know that's a fight she can win and prove to the world who the best female fighter has been and always is.
Yeah, and I just have to correct myself there. Dana White did say that Ronda Rousey 100% wants Chris, but not next. I just added that part in, and I just had a bit of a brain fart. But if Ronda Rousey does come back and she does fight in the UFC,
I was going to say next.
I know, I'm sorry for exciting you, Jason, but if she does come back and if she does fight in the UFC, how long, but doesn't take this Chris Cyborg fight, how long are you and Chris willing to wait for her to do this fight? Is it sort of a ticking time bomb? Because we've spoken to Chris Cyborg before on this show a couple of times, and she's mentioned how she wants to go have a family and have children, and how there's really not that much time left before she's going to do that. Is there a time clock on this fight? If Ronda Rousey comes back and doesn't take it straight away, is there a chance we might not even get to see it?
Well, it depends on how Ronda Rousey. Yeah, I was just saying when he said she wanted to fight Chris next, I was like, wow, I don't know if I heard that or not. But, so that's all right. You brain farted on that bad boy. But we'll see how she looks. Depending on how she looks on her first fight back, it depends on how quick. If she looks like a world beater, they're going to put her on Chris right away. If she goes out there and looks like dog shit, that'll squash the whole idea of it anyways, right? Mm-hmm. It's a fight that should happen and needs to happen. I think both of them think about it all the time. I think both of them want to fight each other. I think Ronda wants to fight Chris. It's just there's a confidence issue with it as of right now, is the way I believe. And we'll see. They're so silly. I've been asked this question now about Ronda and Chris quite a few times now, and I jump around, I mumble and babble a lot of bullshit. Not bullshit, my thoughts and what's in my guts. But I'd love to see the fight, and I'd love to see the fight at 145. I know Ronda's competed many times at 145. I know she competed in the Olympics at 155, from what I understand. So she's no stranger to that. That's probably more of her size, anyways. And I think we'd see a real honest fight at 145.
Yeah, I think 145 would be an amazing way to do the fight on. All right, let's move on to UFC 204, where Michael Bisping faces Dan Henderson for the second time and hopes to avenge his UFC 100 loss. You've spoken to us in the past about how it's part of your job to sort of keep Michael's emotions in check when he goes into a fight. Have you seen sort of what are you expecting considering the stakes in history? How do you make sure Michael doesn't get emotional in a fight with so many stakes on it?
Well, we've been there before now. Mike's a different animal than he was when he fought Dan the first time. He's had his back has been against the wall for the last handful of fights now, and you got to remember he's been fighting pretty talented guys the last few goes. So. His confidence is where is at a place championship confidence. I mean, this guy's a champion. He's handled himself well in the gym. Because this emotion that Michael Bisping has, and that we've able to, calm down a little bit and help him to relax a little bit with, it's there all camp usually. So. And it's not showing up in the gym still. It didn't show up for the last couple of fights because this is something we've been working on now. It takes some time, Takes some time to get, to especially when you had some ups and downs in your careers, Mike is going to have a tremendous amount of pressure, and he's got a lot on his shoulders going out to Manchester. He's fighting a guy that's beaten him before. He's fighting in his hometown. All these tangibles that he has going on right now is going to be, a big thing for pressure and how he's going to handle it. And so far right now, we're not out there yet. Right now in the gym, we're laughing and giggling. We're fine, which is good. He's in good spirits. He's confident. He's killing guys in the gym, knocking guys out in the gym all the time. He really is, and that's something that Michael hasn't always been doing. But Mike's peaking in his career at 37 years old, and he looks better than I've ever seen him, and he's as confident as he's ever been. And we'll see how it is when we get out to Manchester. Because he knows that it's the truth, because he knows that he needs to calm down, and he knows that he needs to relax and stay focused, and he's done it, and he's proven it, and he's felt it. It should make my job a little bit easier when we get out there.
Yeah, I'm wondering, you mentioned that he's knocking guys out in the gym, and you said that it's not always the case. How sort of different is that compared to normally, and also with the fact that Michael Bisping obviously had a notoriously short camp, if you can even call that, for Luke Rockhold, and he said he felt better because he had more power, he wasn't as drained, he sort of had more strength. Have you sort of factored that into this camp to maybe taper it, make it a bit shorter, and make sure that Michael isn't going on those late night runs and overtraining himself?
Yes, exactly, and it's a huge factor. Me and him had a big conversation about today, and we're like, thank God. Michael did a movie a few weeks ago. He was out filming a movie. I don't know if you know this, but he had 2-week movie filming in the middle of camp, and I had a lot of people going, "What the fuck are you doing? You got to tell him not to go. You got to tell him." I said, "Listen, you don't understand, Michael. This is a blessing in disguise. We need Mike. How are we going to stop Mike from training and overtraining? In the middle of the camp, he goes out there. I mean, we started training. We got up our rounds. We were, he was in good shape before he left, but it was almost a blessing in disguise that he had this movie going on because he was forced into a little bit of a break. He had to focus on the movie. Came back. Still in shape. I mean, he's in tremendous amount of shape, and you're absolutely right. We kind of shot, he has a habit of kind of shocking his nervous system a little bit too much because he does overtrain. So he doesn't go in the cage 100% himself a lot of times. His conditioning is always there, and he's able to go the 5 rounds and win on high fashion. But, he hasn't been always hurting these guys, and he has the ability and the strength, the power to do it. He just, it was nice to see him do it in that last fight, the last couple fights. Because you got to remember, Anderson Silva, we have full camp. He trained hard, and he went on there and showed some power. He dropped Anderson Silva. It's such a mental thing, and it's funny because I always say it, and it sounds corny, it sounds bullshit. People might think, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, so he just keeps on saying it's a mental thing, but it really is. The skill set improves constantly, fight to fight, obviously. Fundamentals and all that good stuff we always work on. But, knowing where you're at and seeing where you're going and really having confidence in your – Dan Henderson throws decent punches. He's got a tremendous amount of power. Yes, there's a lot of confidence in his power. He believes in that punching power, believe it or not. I was a boxer. I was a puncher. I could crack pretty hard when I fought.
Yeah.
And I know firsthand there's a belief in it. There really is a belief in your power. There's a belief in going in that pocket, setting down on your shot, and trying to hurt somebody. There's a meanness behind it. There's a lot of mental attitude towards punching and kicking with real authority and doing it to hurt somebody. And that's the way Mike's going at guys now. He's going at them to hurt them now. He's not going out there to pick them apart and break them down and bust them up. He's going out there to hurt them now. And like I said, it's showing up in the gym. And, fundamentally, we've got him to use his legs more, and we've got him to do some things fundamentally. But, mentally, he's at a whole nother level.
Let's talk about Dan Henderson for a second, because this is an interesting situation. Dan is always a dangerous guy. He's always got that H-bomb ready to go, but he's at a later stage of his career where he doesn't look like he used to. He doesn't look like the Dan Henderson that beat Michael Bisping at UFC 100. And Michael is the favorite going into this fight. How do you guys view Dan? And do you worry about Michael being overconfident because of the fact that Dan, maybe isn't the most elite guy in the middleweight division at the moment?
No. I mean, definitely not overconfident. Mike takes every fight very serious. He's taking this. You remember the outcome of the last fight.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody in the right mind, anybody with a conscience whatsoever, falls short of a situation like Michael did, and then you're going to put yourself in the same situation again. You're going to take that very serious. There's no way of look at Dan Henderson just knocked out Hector Lombard, who's a bona fide beast. I mean, Lombard's fucking Jesus Christ. Look at that guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's a beast. He's strong and he's powerful, and Dan was able to get him out of there. Again, going back to his belief in himself and his belief in his power and his mental toughness. So, there are some physical differences in Dan Henderson, which I like because it's actually now more of a fair fight. I know he had the TRT exempt back in the day when they fought, and I went back and watched that fight. He does physically look a little different. Not a huge difference. He really doesn't, and you can see that he's still got that H-bomb, like you say. Mike's come such a far away since then. He's the experience that he's gotten since that fight, and the mental toughness that Michael has is second to none. I mean, the guy, not a lot of people get up and continue to go after some of the losses in the past. But like you said, the most important thing for me with Michael is physically he's ready, mentally he's ready. We just want to just handle this pressure, and that's the most important part. You just gotta, I gotta remind him, how he was thinking before his last couple of fights, and he's got to remember, who the fuck he is, because he is the champion of the world, and he is fighting a guy that he's favored over, and he has all the skills and all the ability to beat. He is going to beat him. It's just a matter of staying calm and doing it in the high fashion.
Yeah, and of course everybody remembers what happened in their first fight. Dan Henderson knocked him out and then landed that punch that he sort of made the logo for his clothing brand. It was absolutely devastating. This was after Michael was out. I'm just wondering, Michael's spoken about that. It really seems like it's something that's been on his mind that affected him. He always sort of seemed like he wanted to get that fight back. How much is there real animosity from sort of you and Mike about what happened at UFC 100, or has it, because it was a while ago and time has passed? Is the animosity sort of worn off now, and it's just about getting a bit of revenge?
I'll tell you this: I did not know Michael during that fight. I did, and as I got to know him, and as I started working with him, and we worked a couple fights together, I went back and watched that fight, and I even went to the gym afterwards. I said, you know what? That's a fight that I want to see you fight again. That's a fight that you deserve to have again. And that's a fight that is going to change your – and the championship changes life, you know what I mean? But it's going to – winning this fight is just like a title. It's just like anything. I mean, of course, he's defending his title, so he is winning the title back, you know. But it subconsciously and consciously it will change his life beating this guy. You know, just change he's already changed his life. He's always a champion. He's going to be a champion for history for the rest of time. You know, he's going to go down in the books. You know, he's going to be the first English champion ever. You know, but for his own being and who Michael is and the fighter that he is, he knows that this is a very important fight to him, and it's something that, and it's not even nobody dislikes Dan Henderson. I don't think Mike dislikes Dan Henderson. He doesn't know Dan Henderson. Mike talks shit to everybody, you know, before he fights, and that's part of his trademark. That's part of who he is, and it's why the fans love to watch him fight, win, lose, or draw. But as far as this is a very important fight for the both of us, for our whole team, for Brady Fink as well, for the guys that Michael's been around for a long time, and you know, it's very important. There's nothing personal here. There's a little scar on Mike that we want to get off, and Dan Henderson's it, and Mike's going to be really focused and try again. He's going to do this. He's going to do it in a high fashion. He's going to go out there and have a good time and redeem himself.
We can't wait to see that. All right, Jason, as we're letting you go, give us a bit of a lowdown. How do you see this fight playing out? How are you visualizing it, obviously, as the coach? And also, may I remind you, last time you were on the show, you predicted that Michael... You actually predicted this. It's crazy. You predicted that Michael would knock Luke Rockhold out with a left hook, and that's exactly what happened. And you were even willing to make it a slap bet. Is there a similar prediction this time around? And are the stipulations the same? The prediction comes true, or everybody gets to slap you? This is like tradition now, man.
Oh shit! I know. I want to make it a tradition. I got a couple of ideas how this can go. So, you know,
we'll give you a multi bet.
You know,
you can give it. Any one of these can come true.
Okay, anyone is. I know Dan has his H bomb, but Bisping's got a Bisping bomb too. His right hand is firing very well. That's a punch he's been stopping guys in the gym, and you know. I think I'm going to go with this. So we'll just go one shot. Every time I answer these questions, I'll go with the one shot that day. If it ends from one shot, I'll tell you what shot it's going to be.
Okay.
All right. How about we go with that? It's going to be a head kick.
Okay.
He's going to knock out.
Come on, Jason. Which leg? What are we doing here? Don't play games with us. No,
I don't want him ducking. I don't want him looking for it. Or maybe I do want him looking for it. Maybe this is all a manipulation. Left head kick. He's gonna knock him out with a left head kick.
Ooh, the stakes are high.
There you go. We feel like a piece of meat, Jason. You may just be using us for Dan Henderson to do something different in the fight, but we love it. We love it. We'll be a piece of meat if we have to be, guys. Jason Parillo, he is a legend amongst men. Make sure to go on ParilloBoxing.com and UFC 204. I mean, this is going to be a huge fight. Best of luck to, I suppose, the King of Manchester on his first title defense. We can't wait to talk to you after it goes down. Thank you so much, Jason.
Hey, thanks, guys. Take it easy. Always great talking to you guys, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, everybody. This is Tyron, the chosen one, Woodley. You are listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys. The last time we spoke to our next guest, we didn't know exactly what the future was going to hold for him, but now he is fighting for the welterweight title on arguably one of the biggest cards of all time. Now he joins us before his huge fight at Madison Square Garden at UFC 205. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, welcome back to Submission Radio. How's it going, man?
Doing great, man. You know, I'm just super excited about this fight coming up November 12th, man, and glad to be on the show with you, my friend.
Well, Stephen, we really appreciate the time, especially with you just flying back from New York and the big fight on the radar. Let's jump to that press conference, that UFC 205 press conference. The news came out a little while ago this week, but being at the actual presser on stage at Madison Square Garden, what did that feel like?
Man, it was super intense, you know, walking out there, having the crowd, the New York crowd kind of treating you as one of their own, chanting Wonderboy, man. It was no words can really describe the way I feel, man. I was smiling from ear to ear. It was pretty intense too. A little bit later on, you know, you got Conor McGregor sitting to the right of me. He's going at it with Eddie Alvarez, and it was just pretty cool to watch that as well.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. You obviously weren't in the UFC for UFC 100, and you missed out on UFC 200. This card is on that level, if not, better. Many people are regarding it as the biggest card of the year. It's going to be a history-making moment, and obviously it's in Madison Square Garden, which makes it a huge deal. Did you ever sort of dream about being on a card of this caliber and when watching those iconic cards, and most of all, being the co-main event of that night?
Oh, of course, man. I was at actually UFC 200, watching UFC 100 back in the day. This is definitely a dream come true. I always dreamt about fighting on a big card, and I've been shooting for this one for a long time because I knew Chris Weidman, who's a longtime training partner and my part of the family now, brother-in-law. Just wanted to be on the same card with him, and this is just like I said, a dream come true, and man, just super excited to be on the show. And yeah, man, this is like you said, I've dreamt about it, and it's happening.
Well, we got to ask you, Stephen, what are your thoughts? How do you feel about being in the co-main event spot under McGregor Alvarez? Are you happy there on the card, or do you sort of wish you were the main event for this big one?
You know what? There was a little a while there where I thought I was the main event, but having Conor McGregor and Eddie Alvarez just brings it to a whole new level, which I don't mind. All I'm focused on is my fight. And so I don't let the hype kind of get, really get to me. A lot of fighters do that. They let the fight, and it kind of worries them a little bit. And I'm just focused on the job at hand, and that's winning that title belt. So yeah, man, it doesn't affect me, I don't think, one bit.
Just on the arena, because that's something special in on itself. Obviously, Madison Square Garden, it means a lot of things to a lot of people. Boxing, ice hockey, NBA, WrestleMania. How could we forget that? The list goes on. What's sort of your most memorable MSG moment that stands out in your mind, if you have one?
Man, I think one of the main things was when Muhammad Ali, I believe, fought in the arena. That's one of the all-time greatest boxers of all time, performing there, and along with a whole list of people, legendary people have walked through there, and just being in there the other day. Actually, I got to walk through, saw some of the the hockey and the basketball team locker room was just amazing. And to walk through the halls, just knowing that legendary people have walked through these halls before. So this is huge for me, I think my dad is more excited than I am, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, we don't blame him. This is going to be huge for just everybody involved. Now, during the UFC 205 presser, the NYC crowd began to set the tone for the fight when they booed Tyron Woodley every time he spoke. There was even a small Wonderboy chant that you mentioned at the start of this interview at one point during the presser. What did you think of the crowd there, and were you surprised that Tyron got that reaction?
I've been training with Chris Weidman for a while, so like I said, New York is a home away from home, and I believe the fans kind of know that and they feel that, and a lot of the fans that were there were behind me all the way with trying to get this title shot, through the whole process of Tyron saying he wasn't going to fight me, he wanted a money fight. It really was the fans that kind of made this happen. They got out there on social media and really worked it up. So I feel that maybe that's one of the reasons why the fans were kind of behind me. Also, being a relative and a longtime training partner with Chris Weidman, who's basically the face of MMA in New York, I think that had a lot to do with it as well. But, man, I thought it was really cool and kind of warmed my heart up a little bit that those guys kind of took me under their wing and, be a part of their family there in New York.
I can only imagine. You mentioned before how he was sitting next to McGregor, and you saw some of the funny, hilarious exchanges between him and Alvarez. Any other sort of favorite moments that you remember from that press conference, other than sort of the ones relating to your fight?
It was pretty funny, man, because at the time one of the I think it was one of the media guys had asked Conor McGregor who would he want to fight, or who would give him the hardest time out there. And of course, Jeremy Stevens opens up and was like, me, man, the 145-pound. Next thing you know, Conor's like looking around. He's like, who the F is this guy? And I was like, everybody started cracking up, dude. That was probably one of the most hilarious moments. Another one was, I saw it on social media. I didn't actually realize it, but you and Conor McGregor and Eddie Alvarez started getting into it. We all know what happened last time. Conor McGregor got into it with somebody there. I think it was Nate Diaz. They started throwing cans and bottles, so I made sure that was kind of out of his reach, so I wouldn't get hit if that started happening. So that actually got a little bit of little bit of media as well. So I thought that was kind of funny.
Dude, that's hilarious because I saw that and I thought, is he doing this intentionally or is this just something that's going on? So in your mind, you thought, okay, I've got this fight happening, UFC 205. I don't want somebody throwing a mother can at the back of my head and cut me open by accident in case something goes down here.
Exactly. You know, I didn't want to give him the ammo to start throwing it. Because I remember last time he just picked up a bottle and just threw it, man. So I know if he started throwing, you know Eddie's going to start throwing. And then next thing you know, Dana White reaches over and just takes the can away from him. I thought that was hilarious, you know.
Yeah.
It was nuts, man. It was nuts. The crowd was just pumped up for this. You know, so it fired everybody else up. I know it fired Conor McGregor up. I mean, as you saw. So, but it, you know, after that whole event, you know, me and Chris, we were pumped up. We were fired up. We got our gear and we went and worked out for like 2 or 3 hours.
I can imagine you'd have to sort of get rid of some of that adrenaline from the press conference. Just want to get your thoughts on something because there's some criticism about McGregor getting to fight Alvarez and keeping his featherweight belt. Huge fight, but obviously such fighters as Khabib and Aldo are pretty upset about the way it came together. You were actually almost in a similar situation with Tyron Woodley trying to fight, you know, GSP or Nick Diaz at one point in you know, Canada, which would have held you up. Just curious, what do you think about the decision and obviously the 145-pound division sort of having to wait for McGregor again?
Well, you know, we really don't know what's going to happen. Dana White's saying it's not going to happen. You know, if he gets the 155 belt, then the 145 belt is going to be, you know, up for grabs. But, you know, obviously he's going to go out there and he's going to, you know, kind of stick it to the man a little bit, which, you know, gets the crowd going some. So we'll see. You know, I don't know if Conor McGregor has that much pull. But, you know what, it's one of those things to where we'll see if it happens. I don't think it's fair for the 145 guys. I mean, because, you know, nothing's happening in that division now. You know, everybody's waiting, and Conor's kind of holding it up. We got a bunch of guys in that division who are up to fight for that title, and they're just waiting in the wind, you know? So I think that's kind of messed up. But, you know, as Conor McGregor said, hey, I'm going to have one belt on one shoulder. The other belt on the other shoulder is going to take an army to take these belts away from me. So we'll see what happens. But I don't think it's fair for the 145 guys.
Well, we got a few questions about Woodley, but you mentioned belts, and that just reminded me of something, Stephen. I was on Instagram, and I saw a photo of you, I believe, at Chris Weidman's house. You were asleep, and you were hugging a title belt. Now, explain to me, how did you first acquire the title belt? Was it a sneaky ninja-like tactic to get it to the bedroom where you were staying? And then what did it feel like cuddling that belt all night long?
You know, man, it was hilarious. You know, we got a little intimate with the belt. No, I'm kidding. It was just a funny thing. You know what I mean? The belt was sitting there right next to me, and Chris was trying to find me. You know what I mean? We were getting ready to go train. He said, "Where you at, man? Where you at?" Of course, Chris just moved into his new house, so he walked to my room and I acted like I was asleep with the belt next to me. He ended up popping a picture before I even knew about it. And next thing you know, he posted on dang Instagram. So and obviously that went viral. But yeah, man, it was really cool. But you know what? Here pretty soon I want to have my own belt to be I want to have next to my bed at night. So I'm super excited about that.
Yeah, you'll be cuddling your own belt. We're very excited for you. Hopefully that all goes your way. We've spoken to you in the past, Stephen, about some of the frustrations that you had sort of towards Woodley leading into this fight. But recently your dad and him actually got into it via social media. Your dad basically reacted to Tyron saying the fight between you and him was confirmed weeks ago, explaining that, you know, you and him only learned about it from a parent watching Fox Sports. What did you think when you saw that going on?
You know what? I just started cracking up. You know, I was just laughing because, you know, my daddy's a proud dad. But, you know, for him to say that I'm fake humble because of that reason, we had no idea we were fighting. And if you saw the tweet, my dad actually went back 6 weeks ago, and Tyron was saying there was no fight. He didn't sign an agreement. So that was a lie right there. He was also saying the first time he was asked to take the fight, he took it. And I'm like, no, he wasn't. You know, I asked him the very first night on Fox 4 right after his fight, and he told me no. So that's a lie right there. So my dad just kind of went on and just kind of let the fans and let Tyron know that we didn't know. The first time we found out we were fighting was when he announced it on Fox Sports 1. And, of course, you know, while they're you know, going back and forth, I'm out here training. You know, I'm not worried about anything that is said on social media. I'm focused. I'm working hard. And that's all I'm worried about, you know. Whatever is going on in the media right now, whatever people are saying, you know, that can wait. Right now, it's just me and Tyron.
So I'm just wondering, as far as obviously him announcing it on Fox Sports 1. How did you actually find out? Were you watching Fox Sports 1 and you saw him announce it? Or was it that you were in training and somebody told you afterwards? Where exactly were you when you found out?
I was actually in the middle of teaching a kids class.
Wow.
And, just sitting there teaching classes, and next thing you know, one of our karate parents jumps up in the air and starts going crazy. I'm like, oh my goodness, what's going on? She won the lottery or something. And she's like, no, Stephen, you got the title shot, man. You got the title shot. I was like, you're lying. See, she ended up showing me and actually the whole class and, the parents there that he had announced it, and everybody started going crazy, man. And that my heart just lit up, that it's official. Like it's happening. Because there for a while, I wasn't really sure where it was going. After Damian Maia ended up winning his fight, there was talk about him, getting the title shot of obviously Georges St. Pierre and whoever else Tyron was calling out. So once that was announced and that was official, that did it all for me. So that's exactly how I found out.
And what a great place to find out as well. I mean, in a lot of ways, you couldn't really pick a better spot to do it. Quickly on the social media stuff with your dad and Woodley, there was something, while you were laughing, did you see the comment where Woodley said that he loves seeing your pop fight your battles for you and questioned if you were 13 on 34? Did you get to see that response that he gave to your dad? What was your reaction to that one?
That was funny, man. My dad's always got my back. And, I don't know, man. For me, like I said, I don't care what Tyron says, so obviously I'm not going to get on there and fuel the fire. It doesn't bother me one bit. But, Dad thought I was a little bit disrespectful, and I didn't actually find out until I saw it on social media. And my dad's response was, you know what, neither. He's not 12 or 34. While he's over there tweeting my dad, I'm out here training. So my dad said, son, you're slow in every aspect of the game. So I started cracking up.
It was a hilarious back and forth. You mentioned respect. Tyron claimed that he's respected all of his opponents, and he's even looked up to some of them in the past. While he definitely respects you as a fighter, he doesn't respect you as a man, and that's something that sort of fuels him going into this fight. Just wondering, what are your feelings towards Tyron, and has this lead up to the fight changed them in any way?
You know what? Not at all. Not at all. I respect Tyron, and for him to say that he doesn't respect me as a man, I don't know what I've done to him to get him for him not to respect me. I don't know if it's the fact that I really didn't know that, he said that the fight was set like weeks and weeks ago when it wasn't. I think he's just trying to get in my head, and you know what I mean? It is what it is. I don't care. I don't care what he thinks of me. I'm just going to go out there and do my thing.
Well, the funny thing was, at the press conference, it seemed like you guys were very cordial, and he shook your hand, and when you guys did the stare down, it didn't look like there was too much animosity. Just wondering, what was that moment like when you looked in his eyes for the first time? They say you can learn a lot about your opponent in that moment. Did you get anything? And were you surprised that he shook your hand at the press conference after he's been saying all this stuff?
You know what? During the social media things that we had going on last week, I think he kind of came out and realized that I actually didn't know that we were going to be fighting. I found out that night, and he kind of backtracked a little bit. And everything was cool, man. During last week, during the media, we were talking to each other, shaking hands, and like I said, it might have been like a scare tactic or something he was trying to do to get in my head. And it obviously, I let him know real quick it's not going to work. So man, and looking at it in his eyes, I don't know if there was a little disappointment there that I saw. I figured that he might have thought the fans maybe would have had his back. He was a little surprised that they were booing him, and I could tell that, and I think that's in his head a little bit. But you know what? He's going to be the best Tyron Woodley when he steps out there November 12th, and that's the guy that I want to be prepared for.
Just curious, you said you spoke a bit at that press conference. What was that conversation like? What did you guys talk about? Did you get a chance to sort of clear the air a little bit?
You know what? It wasn't that we were just chatting like, kind of like we're chatting now. It was just, we were talking, everybody was having the kind of the same conversations, talking with each other. And it was not like we had a one-on-one combo. It was kind of everybody talking, being around each other. There was no beef, you know what I mean? There was no hard feelings. And, we were being, both him and myself were being very professional.
Stephen, we really appreciate the time. Just a few more questions and we'll let you go. You spoke about Chris Weidman being on this card, and we're all very excited because he's done so much to get the sport legalized in the state of New York. But everybody's talking about the fact that Woodley's a strong wrestler. Will you be training and sparring with Weidman leading into UFC 205? And talk us through your plan for training, because UFC 205 isn't that far away. Will you be going to New York to train there permanently, or will you be training out of home where you are now?
Actually, I started my camp 2 weeks ago up in New York, training with Chris Weidman for this fight. And obviously, my wrestling has come a long way. Training with him, obviously my wrestling coach Thomas Lee, my buddy Matt Miller, Olympic wrestler from Canada, has really helped me out with that. So yeah, I'll definitely be back up to New York, making trips up there. So I'm spending my camp here and up there, so kind of going back and forth. I got my buddy Ryan Hall coming in, I think tomorrow, so he'll be here. I know he's got a fight coming up as well. But yeah, man, as much as I can with Chris Weidman, we're going to be, preparing for this fight together, and that's why I think this excites me so much, having a relative and a close friend fighting on the same card.
Just on that wrestling, a lot of people believe that Woodley would try and get you down from the onset of the fight. Obviously, McDonald wasn't able to do it. Hendricks couldn't really do it. Is Woodley sort of the toughest grappler you've faced, or do you sort of see Rory and Johnny as harder tests?
You don't see, if you look back in his fights, I mean, he doesn't throw a double or go for the takedown very often. Tyron wants to put those hands on you. He wants to try and knock you out. I think once he gets a little frustrated, obviously he's going to try and do that, just like everybody else that I faced. I think pretty much the hardest opponent in the division is Rory McDonald. I mean, Rory pretty much schooled Tyron Woodley. But you know what? I can't take this guy lightly, and that's how I go in looking at this fight. A lot of people are like, oh, man, you're going to crush this dude. And Tyron Woodley, he smoked him. And you know what? I don't think like that. I'm not the type of guy to do that, because I want to prepare for the best guy, and that's Tyron Woodley. That's the guy standing in front of me. I'm preparing myself as this is going to be the hardest fight I've ever faced, and it possibly could be. I want to be ready for 5-minute rounds.
Obviously, you're not expecting this to be an easy test at all, but is there a specific way that you visualize this fight playing out now that you finally got the shot in the moment to do it? Is there a specific scenario in which you see yourself beating him?
You know what? There's a million different ways that things can go down, and ways that I can beat him. The only thing that I visualize is my hand raised at the end of the fight. You can prepare yourself all you want for a fight, but once you get out there, it's all on reaction. You may have a game plan to go out there and do this and do that, just like I did with Rory McDonald. I planned to go out there and really be aggressive and take it to him and try and, hopefully, try and tire him out, maybe finish him in the first round. But as soon as I got out there, things changed. I just felt a little different, and I had to kind of adapt and go with a different game plan. So, you know what, however he is, I'm going to be ready for it. If he's going to wait back, or if he's going to be aggressive, if he wants to stand and bang, or if he wants to try and grapple me, I'm going to be there to stop him.
I can't wait for this fight. Stephen, we'll let you go in just a moment. Assuming all goes to plan, what do you think that moment will be like when the belt gets put around your waist? Have you sort of pictured that in your mind? Can you visualize that?
I do visualize it, man. Every day, every time I step out there on the mat or in the cage sparring, I visualize it every time, every second, just about. And you know what? The first thing I'm gonna thank, obviously, is my Lord and Savior, but everybody that helped me get me here, which is my coaches, my mom and my dad, the sacrifices they have made, even my sparring partners, the abuse that they have taken for their, in their bodies and in training for me to get where I am. Man, I'm thanking them first and foremost. And that's exactly what I'm going to take my belt. A lot of people take their belts home. I'm taking it to the gym, so everybody can enjoy it, not just myself.
So you'll be sleeping with it during the night, but when it comes time to go to the gym, you'll bring it with you to the gym and then bring it back to the bedroom at night. But quick question before we do let you go. We know you don't want to look past UFC 205, but if you do win and you do become champion, what's the plan afterwards? Because you've been in a situation where you've had to really work for that title shot. You've waited for a really long time, and now you'll be in a position as champion where you can defend it as frequently as you want, and against whoever you think seems fit. So do you see yourself being a champion that fights frequently? And do you think you'd give Damian Maia a shot at that title fight if you become champion?
You know what? There's only one guy that I can think of right now who deserves it, and that is Damian Maia. You know, he's worked really hard. He's on a 6-fight winning streak. So.
Are people whistling at you, Stephen?
Yes, they are. They're whistling at me right now.
What's going on? Talk us through this. We're on the scene.
We got some ladies right here yelling at me right now. So.
What are they yelling?
I'll be over there
at?
in a second. They're like, Steven, come over here. So yeah, man, I think they're waiting on me. But yeah, man, Damian Maia is it, buddy. I mean, he's worked really hard. He's a very honorable fighter, and I think he deserves it, man. You know, he's the top of the game.
Well, there you go. The ladies are calling your name, so we don't want to hold you up. Hey, before we let you go, we've spoken about this on the show before, Stephen. Did you know that there's going to be a new Power Rangers movie coming out next year? We thought we'd break the news to you if you didn't find out.
Dude, I knew something like this was going to happen. I heard, and so it's official. It's happening, right? I'll be the first one to buy a ticket, dude.
It's happening, dude. So I think when that movie comes out, we'll have to get you on just to do a movie review, because I feel like there's a Power Ranger connection between Submission Radio and Stephen Thompson. So I'm glad that you're
down,
excited,
baby.
because we're excited too.
I'm so down, man. Let's do it.
There you go, guys. It's official. Stephen, we won't hold you up anymore. The ladies are calling, and we want you to go to them. So we'll let you go. Thank you so much for taking the time, and we'll see you in New York. Guys, don't forget, obviously, to watch Stephen take on Tyron Woodley for the welterweight UFC title at UFC 205, November 12th. The time difference will make it November 13th here, and follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Wonderboy MMA. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much, Stephen.
No worries, man. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
This is Don Fry, and you're listening to Submission Radio. You touch that dial and I'll kill you.
All right, guys, we are happy we were able to get this next man on the show today. You know him from his awesome work on Sunsport and his podcast, The Brit Pack, a good friend of Submission Radio. He just spent 6 hours cage side at the Hydra in Glasgow watching 20 crazy bouts at ACB 47, if you can believe that. Then he watched the whole UFC Portland card at his hotel bar, and now he joins us to share his thoughts on UFC Fight Night 96 and give us also a preview for UFC 24 Bisping vs. Henderson 2, one of the hardest working men in the game. Simon Head, welcome to Submission Radio. How's it going, mate?
I'm not going to lie, I'm very tired. But other than that, it's all good. I think I've seen more fights in the last 18 hours than I think I've ever seen in that sort of space of time before. It's been a crazy, crazy day, let me tell you.
Yeah. Well, it's great to have you in the program. And for the listeners at home, Simon is at the bar still. So if there's a bit of commotion in the background, he'll fill us in. Who knows what's going to happen? This is what makes it exciting. Maybe there'll be something crazy that goes on over there, Simon. You can fill us in on as it happens. Maybe Conor McGregor stops by the bar for some reason. He's stopping off on a plane, on his private plane, and grabbing a beer, and something crazy happens. So you keep us in. You interrupt any moment that you think's important to let us know what's going on back there. But what we want to do with Simon today is, and by the way, this is his debut on the episode version of Submission Radio. We, of course, did the breakdown with him in Vegas, but it's great to have you make your debut with us, Simon. What we will do is we'll talk about the UFC Portland card, more particular, the co-main event and the main event, and then we will utilize Simon because he's such a great man, knows so much about what's going on, and talk to him and get him to preview UFC Turf War with us. So it's going to be an exciting time. Simon, thanks for joining us. Let's kick it off because we know you're tired and we want to get you to bed after this is all said and done. I want to kick this off at the co-main event from UFC Portland. We saw the fight between Will Brooks and Cowboy Oliveria. It was an interesting situation before the fight even started, with Oliveria missing weight, and not just missing weight, but missing weight by quite an amount. I want to ask you first, Simon. A lot of people were expecting Will Brooks to come in and beat Oliveira. When you saw what happened in the fight with Brooks hurting his rib, you saw him talking to the corner about how he was hurt. What went through your mind? Did you think that it was going to be, well, a good opportunity for Oliveira to turn this thing around and win the fight?
Yeah, when you get a rib injury, there's really not a hell of a lot you can do about it. It's, it can happen from a very innocuous incident in a fight, or it can be from a really solid punch. But once you've damaged them, it can affect your breathing. It can affect all sorts. And I know in the corner between rounds, he said, I feel like SH1T, he wasn't happy at all in his corner. And
Aussie show, Simon, you can say whatever you like. There's no censoring.
Oh,
here.
yeah, he felt like shit in the corner. And I'm trying to bring some decorum, lads. I'm doing my best. But no, it's all good. He wasn't a happy boy in the corner. He'd taken a bad shot to the ribs. and he wanted to get that fight over with. But at that point, the fight was already slipping away from him. Oliveira, obviously, I'm sure we'll get onto the whole weight issue and how Brooks reacted to that. But as soon as that rib injury happened and Oliveira realised it, he was able to capitalise, and he ended up getting the stoppage. And of course, we had bad blood before the fight, and that then spilled over after the fight as well.
Yeah. I want to talk to you guys about what happened after the fight first. But first, Casper, you saw that Brooks said that to the corner, that his rib was busted, it was hurt, and the corner sort of just motivated him to keep on fighting. I myself thought, look, I'm not a corner man, and I don't know Brooks that well, but maybe some different advice, maybe giving him some advice on how he can go about the fight to stay away from hurting that rib more. I was a little bit disappointed by what came from the corner when they found out about the rib. I'm just curious, what did you think? How did you think his corner handled the situation when they found out that he was pretty significantly hurt?
I'll be honest, I kind of think that at that point, when you've already got the game plan and everything's set and everything that you've been training for is sort of in motion, you know the game plan, you know what to do. And I think the one thing that's sort of stopping you from executing is that rib. So I don't really think the corner could have said too much as far as, what he could do or what he could change. I think really what he needed right then and there was someone to sort of, I don't know, I guess inject him with a bit more will, pardon the pun, a bit more, I guess, venom to go in there and keep fighting and not give up. I think that if they really sort of, I don't know, overblew his mind with, look, you need to do this, you need to do that. I don't even know that Will Brooks would have really computed it. I don't really know that he would have been able to pay attention. And when you're in that much pain, and I've never had this rib injury, thank God, knock on wood, but I hear it's absolutely agonizing. I don't know whether he really would have been able to compute and execute a different plan and change things on the spot. So I don't think I'd really, fault the corner in that sense.
Simon, do you think the corner should have asked him if he wanted to keep on fighting? I mean, it seemed to me that he didn't really want to go into that third round. He was making the facial expressions that he was hurt. Do you think the question should have been made, do you want to keep on going? Or do you think after all the work that's been put into the camp, the fact that they know him really well on a personal basis and know without asking him that he should keep going on, the question shouldn't have been posed to him?
I think there's no harm in asking him the question. If he's in as much clear discomfort as he was in, there's no harm in saying, are you good to do this? We can live to fight another day here. Because at the end of the day, if he'd have quit on his stall, he still would have lost the fight. So, it gets to the stage where you think, can I win the fight from here? Obviously the corner obviously felt that he was okay enough to go out there. Ultimately, it's down to the fighter. As Casper said, I think once you get an injury like a rib injury like that, it's very difficult to come up with an alternative game plan. If you keep it at distance, you're open to body kicks. If you go in close, you need to grapple and you need to wrestle, and there's a lot of body-to-body contact. So once you've got a rib injury, you're between a rock and a hard place, really. There's not too much you can do. They could have asked him, do you want to call it a day? That's a tough question to ask a professional fighter. These guys are very proud athletes, and it would take someone of very, very clear mind and sort of strong constitution to be able to turn around and say, yeah, it's the right decision for me to stop, because that's not in their mindset. These guys get in there and they basically walk through fire for their career, and for someone to effectively throw their own towel in, so to speak, would have been a very unusual thing to see. But no, it was kind of a tough one on Will Brooks, and we didn't really see the best of him tonight, unfortunately for him.
Casper, I'm curious because Oliveira comes out with the win, but Brooks hurts his rib. Also, Oliveira misses weight before the fight. It's not really a win in the sense that a lot of fighters, not that wouldn't be proud of, but it's an interesting situation to be in. A lot of people online didn't really give him that much credit for the win. How do you see this whole win play out? Because there's the sense in everyone's mind that, Will did hurt his rib during the fight, which is because of Oliveira. So, I mean, look, Oliveira did stop him and did finish the fight fair and square. But how do you see this win, and what do you think it does for him?
So, first of all, with the rib injury, obviously it took a lot away from Will Brooks' performance. And actually, if you guys haven't read it, jump on Bloody Elbow. Conor Rebush has a great article detailing how Will Brooks is very much a 5-round fighter. And not so much that he struggles, but he's more suited to 5-round fights where he gets better as the fight goes on, as opposed to 3-round fights. So, anyway, he obviously wasn't able to implement his game plan in any way, even for a 3-round fight. The rib injury was caused by Oliveira, so you can't really take anything away from him in that sense. But what bothers me is that Will Brooks, he's very good in the clinch, and he wasn't as successful against Alex Oliveira in this fight. And Alex Oliveira, he sort of used his strength a lot. So when you have the fact that he comes in 5 pounds overweight, which I don't even know how you do that, 5 pounds overweight, that's not mismanaging your weight cut. That's a huge... I guess that's a lot of weight to come in over. And then he comes in and uses this game plan where he uses his strength a lot, his strength advantage and his size. I thought that was very unfair to Will Brooks. So when you win, I mean, fair enough, you can be proud. A lot of people say, well, Will Brooks, he talked shit to Alex Oliveira. I think he deserved it. I think he deserved to talk shit, or at the very least, he had the right to. And I don't really think that Alex Oliveira has as much of a right to, I guess, be offended or be upset about it. Look, if you miss weight, you have to cop it and you have to sort of take it on the chin. He beats Will Brooks, fair play, but then to sort of, give him the DX crotch chop, I understand why Will Brooks would be upset about that. So in a sense, Alex Oliveira, he won the fight, but he lost a lot of fans. And then, obviously, the UFC don't like people missing weight, so even though he's going up to welterweight, it is a good win. I think it's always going to be marred by the fact that Will Brooks hurt his rib, and a lot of people say you beat Will Brooks, but you didn't beat 100% Will Brooks, even though he inflicted the injury. But look, at the end of the day, he's going back up to welterweight, so he's starting afresh. I don't know exactly what it does for his career, but for his fan base, I think it definitely hurts him.
It definitely keeps him in the UFC, you'd guess, because if he lost this fight and missing the weight, I mean, who knows what could have happened to him after this. But, Simon, I want to quickly get your thoughts on this. And also, with a few controversies happening over the last few weeks, we saw what happened between Edmund and Verdum, and then we saw what happened between Roy Nelson and Big John McCarthy. Were you worried during that period when Will Brooks was sort of going towards Oliveira, we were going to have another controversy on our hands?
Well, he was clearly not a happy chappy, was he? He was clearly livid with everything that had happened with the missing of the weight, and obviously the fight didn't go his way. And then, like, the final insult was obviously the old Degeneration X crotch chop at the end, and it just seemed totally unnecessary. And when you're the one in the wrong, you don't go around acting like that. It was a bit of an underhand thing for him to do. It really wasn't the right situation for him to be doing that. You do that sort of thing when you're the one in the right. You don't, because all he's doing, like, reputationally, he's digging a hole for himself. He got the win, but he didn't really win too much else. He didn't win a lot of respect tonight, which is a shame, because people I know who know him say he's a good guy, he's a nice guy. But for whatever reason, the goings on of the last 48 hours, him and Will Brooks have obviously rubbed each other up the wrong way, and we've now got this situation where the guy misses weight by a fair margin, as you say, Casper. I mean, this isn't a miscalculated weight cut. I don't know whether there was an injury or whether there was an issue. You hear things, people staying in hotels and the sauna packs up, so they can't use the sauna, or they've injured themselves during the last few weeks, so they can't get on the bike and lose those last few pounds, So we don't know the full story of that. But sometimes it's just not taking the weight cuts as seriously as they should, and not respecting the opponent as much as they should. And that's clearly what Will Brooks thought. And he had words to say about it. And I think when you're the one in the wrong and you miss weight, and it wasn't a narrow miss, was it? It wasn't, you missed like a couple of pounds. It was 5 pounds. So, I think when you're in that position, you have to just take it on the chin and hold your hands up and say, okay, I messed up. But then when you get to the fight, all that gets forgotten about. You get in there and you compete. And at the end of it, you shake hands, you say sorry for what happened beforehand, and then you walk away with your win bonus and a smile on your face. That's all you can do. Unfortunately, Alex Oliveira decided to start chucking some pro wrestling gestures around in the octagon, and that hasn't done him any favours at all. So, but you say about going back up to welterweight, that's probably good for him, given he's got the extra weight. Although, as I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit, moving up a weight is not necessarily a guarantee of making weight next time around.
Yeah, well, that's right. And I mean, you bring it up, Simon, so let's talk about the main event. John Lineker, again, missed weight. It wasn't an Oliveria type miss where it was just completely out of the ballpark, but still he mismanaged his cut. Apparently he was on weight during the week, had something to eat, and then when he came into weigh-in was marginally over. Casper, I want to get your thoughts on the fight. I mean, look, I am overweight right now, but I guess I don't have to weigh in for anything for some time until summer comes, and then I got to weigh in for people to see me on the beach. But Casper, I want to talk to you about the main event. I want to get your thoughts. I mean, a lot of people love this fight. I really enjoyed it. To me, it really made watching the event worthwhile. It was a great show of two guys that are just amazing to watch. Two different tactics in the octagon together. What did you think of this matchup and how it played out?
Yeah, it was a great fight. I really didn't know how this one was going to play out. On one hand, I kind of thought, look, Dodson, he's so fast and he's got such good footwork. He's sort of going to play the matador to the bull of John Lineker, and then you got Lineker, who's ultra tough and he just swings leather. I thought, look, if Dodson's going to be able to stay away from the brawling, he should be able to win this one. I didn't think it was going to be any kind of knockout victory for either guy. I thought more likely Dodson will be able to stay on the outside and really outpoint him over 5 rounds. And instead, Lineker really impressed me. Just the way he was able to, pressure Dodson. He was able to land those massive body shots that he's known for. The punches, we saw him go 5 rounds, which is, extremely impressive. I liked exactly what I saw. It was a great fight. There were moments where I thought Dodson sort of didn't follow the game plan as well as he could have. There were moments where he was genuinely hurt, but there were other parts where he sort of chose to brawl with Lineker, and that's just not a fight that you're ever going to win. But all in all, I agreed with the decision, and not by a lot. I mean, neither man winning would have surprised me. There's actually a hilarious moment where Bruce Buffer was reading out the winner, and he says, "John," and then neither man made any kind of reaction because we really didn't know which John it was. So I was happy with Lineker winning, but I could have seen it going either way. We'll talk, I guess, in a second about what we think is actually next for him and whether he does deserve that next title shot.
Yeah, Simon, before we get to that, I want to get your thoughts. Did you agree with the scorecard? I mean, when I was watching this fight, I agree with Casper. I could have seen Dodson winning this one because he had a lot of really good strikes that he had Lineker with, and I could have seen Lineker win this one as well. But how did you score this one? Did you have Lineker winning? Did you agree with the official decision?
Sorry, and Simon, just before you jump in with your opinion, I should probably explain the reason why I had Lineker winning on such a close card is because even though Dodson sort of had more strikes, I thought that Lineker did the more damage, so I figured I'd get in there. Simon, what did you think?
I'll be completely honest with you. Normally when you watch these main events, you start scoring from round 1 because you never know what's going to happen in these fights. I honestly didn't even start scoring this fight. There was no notion in my mind that this was going to go 5 rounds. I honestly thought there was going to be a stoppage in this fight. I picked Dodson to win it by a late stoppage in rounds 4 or 5. That obviously didn't happen, so disregard any picks you see from me in the future. But when the fight got to the end of the 5th, and there's a few of us hardy souls still sitting in the hotel bar watching the fight, and we both, we sort of turned around as me and a guy called Brian Lacey who did the commentary for ACB today, and we turned to each other and said, "Who won that then?" And we both looked at each other and we just didn't know. It was like, is it Lineker's constant forward pressure and power punches, or is it Dodson's cleaner work? Because I think Dodson was landing the cleaner strikes, and his accuracy was very good. But he was on the back foot a lot. But so I don't think you could have argued if it had been the other way around. It was one of those fights where no one's going to be screaming robbery, whatever the result there. I think the split decision kind of highlights just what a tough fight that was to score. I think push comes to shove, I probably would have pushed towards Dodson just because of the cleaner work. I didn't see an enormous difference in damage. Obviously, the forward pressure was from John, but that's the last scoring criteria that you look at, really. It's all about effective striking, effective grappling. Dodson managed to take down or 2, and at one point had Lineker's back. So there were those other facets in the fight that maybe could have come into play. So, but it was such a razor thin, super close, super competitive fight that there's no argument really over who won that fight. And if you'd have given it to Dodson, I don't think anyone would have cried about it either.
Well, we put out a poll on our Twitter to ask what should be next for Lineker. And at 63%, everybody wants to see him versus Garbrandt. Of course, that fight was supposed to happen, but it didn't come together for various reasons. One of the things that someone brought up online, and I want to ask you about this, Casper, is the fact that Lineker missing weight for this fight hurts his chances of getting a next title shot because people want to see him make the weight before he has an opportunity to fight for the title. Do you agree with the people's choice? Do you want to see him versus Garbrandt next?
No, I think that even though we've had TJ Dillashaw recently on the show and he's got a strong argument for why he's ranked number one, he should fight Dominic Cruz, I think, hey, the trash talk between Cruz and Garbrandt is just too much to pass up, and it's something fresh, and I feel like Garbrandt has a lot more momentum than John Lineker, even though Lineker just posted up a great performance. I mean, Garbrandt's been going in there, knocking guys out in the first round, and, you know, we were speaking to someone recently, and apparently they're going to be making Garbrandt, this is just rumors here, Garbrandt versus Cruz for UFC 207, so I think that Lineker, even though he's doing the right thing and sort of calling out the champ, I don't think it's going to happen. I would much rather see John Lineker versus, say, a TJ Dillashaw, and that could be sort of a title eliminator, than the winner versus the winner of, say, Dominic Cruz and Cody Garbrandt. I think as far as the missing weight, look, it does hurt him, I think, either way. Not as much as, say, like an Alex Oliveira, and not as much as, say, in the flyweight division, when Lineker was still a flyweight, because I think that weight cut was sort of inconceivable and people could see he was struggling. At 135, he's not really struggling. It seemed like it came down to mismanagement, but at the same time, with these new weighing regulations and rules, you only get one shot. In the past, if you miss weight, you have another hour or two to sort of make up that weight. Here, if you step on the scales, you don't make weight, that's it. You know, title fight's off. So I think, if anything, the UFC will probably have a very stern talking to with him and say, look, you can't do this. If we put you in a title fight, you need to make the weight or you will ruin our event. And I think it's a learning process for him, or learning experience. I don't think he'll mismanage his weight cut in the future, hopefully.
Well, Simon, Cody Garbrandt tweeted out in response to Hunter Alex Homestake when he asked about the fight. Cody said he wouldn't make it out of the first round. I mean, we've already spoken to Cody about the potential Lineker fight before when they were supposed to fight, but I'm just curious, what do you want to see next for Garbrandt? I mean, my opinion's different from Casper. I want to see TJ Dillashaw give this rematch. I'd like to see Garbrandt versus Lineker, but I'm curious what you think, Simon. What would you like to see next?
I want to see Cody versus Dominic Cruz. That is the hot rivalry in the division right now. They need to strike while the iron is hot. Get him in there with Dominic Cruz. It's a continuation of the Dominic Cruz versus Team Alpha Male rivalry that's been going for years now, and I think that fight absolutely can happen now. And in terms of Lineker, because he missed weight, I don't think he should be put in against the guy above him in the rankings. So I would give him Jimmy Rivera. I think stylistically that is a fantastic fight. I think it's a fight that Jimmy Rivera deserves. He deserves a place or two above him in the rankings. Rivera's ranked 5th. Lineker's ranked 3rd. And I think it just also gives Lineker a little sort of slap on the wrist and says, listen, if you're serious about challenging for a world championship, you've got to win the fight with the scales before you can even consider being put in a title fight. So we're going to just pump the brakes a little bit on you moving up those rankings and taking on people above you. You take on another surging contender first, prove you can make weight, prove you can beat another contender, then we'll stick you in there in a number one contender fight. So I would see, I'd do Jimmy Rivera versus John Lineker. I would do Cody Garbrandt versus Dominic Cruz. That would be my game plan for both of those guys.
And not making friends with TJ Dillashaw, who I guess would be sitting around and maybe sending you a few angry tweets. Why, Simon? Why did you do this to me? But let's talk about UFC 204, which is next weekend. Simon, we're excited for the event, and as one of the main men on the scene, we want to get a bit of a preview from you before we let you go and let you get some of that much-needed sleep. So first question, I want to know, what's the vibe like over there in England for this event? We imagine the fans are beyond excited for this show.
It's kind of yes and no. I mean, obviously Michael Bisping coming home to defend his title, that's something special. He's billed as being from Manchester. He's actually from a little town called Clitheroe, which is about half-hour drive from Manchester. But Manchester is technically his hometown in terms of his fighting city. He's fought in Manchester before, and he's always taken the roof off the place whenever he's fought there. But he's never headlined there for the UFC. He was due to compete against Mark Munoz a few years back at a UFC Fight Night event, and he had the issues with his detached retina, and that forced him off the fight card. And at that point, we were fearing for the guy's career. We just didn't know what was going to happen at that point. He's obviously rebounded superbly from then. He's got this fight with Dan Henderson, and people are genuinely excited for this fight. The downside to this is the timing. In terms of people are going to have to watch this fight in the middle of the night in the UK, because it's going to be aired at exactly the same time as the Las Vegas pay-per-view. So the Fight Pass prelims will be at 11:30 p.m. UK time, The TV prelims will kick off at 1 a.m. UK time.
Oof.
Main card, 3 a.m. And Bisping will probably make his walk to the octagon between 4:30 and 5 o'clock in the morning UK time. So there are going to be a lot of very bleary-eyed Brits in the stand.
And what day is this in the UK? Is this Saturday or Sunday for you guys?
It'll be Saturday night, Sunday morning. So it'll be exactly the same as if we were watching a standard Las Vegas pay-per-view. So for the people who are going to be there, it's going to be special because it's a world title fight featuring Britain's first UFC world champion. So that's a special occasion. That's a moment in British MMA history right there. So that in itself is special. Any Michael Bisping fight in Manchester is extra special as well. And it's going to be in the middle of the night. So that's going to give it a bit of a novelty factor for the people who have tickets. But for the boys and girls back home, propping themselves up on coffee and Red Bull and watching it on television, the fight might just as well be in Las Vegas because it makes little difference to them. And that's the only sort of negative I can really put on it, because if this fight was taking place UK prime time, then the opportunity to really get more casual fans involved, because really only the hardcores are going to be watching this on TV, because that's just the way the sport is in this country, because it's on such an antisocial time. You got to be pretty invested to stay up and watch this stuff live. So, and even the long-time fans of the UFC here in the UK, a lot of them, they TiVo the show, they DVR the show, and they'll watch it the next morning. So it's a tough one. It would be great to think that maybe we can get a big world championship event like this on UK prime time. And I think without sort of going off on too much of a tangent, with this whole new ownership thing with the UFC, they need to recoup some of this $4.2 billion that they've put in. And they're not going to do that by just doing exactly what Zuffa did. They need to do over and above. They need to do extra. And the obvious way to do that is to expand out into the likes of Europe, down your way in Australia, into Asia. But the key and the absolutely critical thing here is that they hold events at prime time in that market and get the big names on there, because that's what's going to get people out there. That's what's going to get bums on seats. And ultimately, that's what's going to switch new fans onto the sport. The Fight Night cards are all well and good, and they're great for what they are. But people want to see the champions. They want to see the superstars. And we've got our own superstar who is now a champion in Michael Bisping. And I can't help but think it's a little bit of a missed opportunity that the UFC haven't taken a bit of a pump with this card and said, let's put it on at 8 p.m. in the evening. So when Bisping fights, he's fighting at like 10:30 at night. That, I think, would have got them so many more new fans. But the actual event itself, I think, will be great. We've got a load of British talent on the card. Brad Pickett's on the card. He always brings the action. Mark Diakiese, first fight of the night. Watch out for that lad. For those of you out there who haven't seen Mark Diakiese fight, he's probably the most exciting British prospect to hit the UFC in a long, long time. Won his last 2 fights by knockout in combined time of 1 minute. He's a serious talent. He fights Lucas Sajewski in the very first fight on Fight Pass. We got Jimmy Mano at OSP. We've got Brad Pickett, as I say, Ian Entwistle, Davey Grant, Leon Edwards, Danny Roberts. So we've got a load of British guys on there to keep the local fans happy. And of course, we've got Vitor Belfort, Gegard Mousasi in the co-main event, and that's not going to suck either. So it's going to be a good fight card, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be good fun.
Yeah, I mean, you said a whole bunch of things, so I don't even know what to sort of talk about first. You know what? No, it's an interesting point though that you brought up, Simon, and it's a very double-edged sword about, sort of the timing difference and sort of when fights go on. It's something that us as Aussies have always battled as well, because we've had cards in the past starting at like 8 o'clock in the morning, on a Sunday morning, which, being in Australia, obviously, is a great drinking culture, much like over there in the UK. It's very hard for people to wake up that early, as it would be to sort of stay up for you guys as well. But the explanation that we got from the UFC is that, look, it's all, at the end of the day, it's all about the pay-per-views. It's about the pay-per-view market. And I believe in the UK, you guys get your pay-per-views for free. Is that correct?
Yeah, the deal we have with BT Sport, and it's just recently been basically been re-upped and improved, because the rights were a little bit disparate, so we didn't have everything in one place. Now every single UFC event is live on BT Sport. So every main card is live. Every TV prelim is live, and the TV prelims and the Fight Pass prelims are also on UFC Fight Pass. So they share the TV prelims with Fight Pass. but we get everything. We get absolutely everything, and you get that for your monthly subscription, whether you get it by buying it through Sky or whether you get it direct through BT. But if you get BT Sport, you get every single UFC event live, which is fantastic. It is tricky with the time zone at times.
I think the UFC kind of looks at it and sort of thinks, well, if you guys aren't going to be paying for the pay-per-view, we might as well cater to the pay-per-view markets like in America and, Australia and other places. But what I'm wondering, though, with Bisping, and you mentioned sort of the growth in Europe and things like that, how famous would you say he is now that he is champion, he is your guy, and has his stock gone up and his fame since becoming champion? And would you sort of compare his fame to, say, I don't know, dare I say soccer or cricket stars over there?
To be honest, no. I mean, for those who know their fight sports, they know Michael Bisping. He's been around for such a long time. And when the UFC was making a real marketing push in the UK, he was a standard bearer. He was going around all the media outlets doing interviews with people. He was voted, I think at one point we had a lads mag in the UK called Zoom Magazine, and they voted him. Yeah, they voted him Britain's coolest man, and which was quite an honour. That was back in like 2005 or something. So, but these days he's, because obviously he now lives over in Orange County, California. He's a little bit removed from it. So what you find now is it's really the hardcore fans, it's the MMA fans who really latch on to Michael Bisping. The ability for him to really get out and become more of a mainstream star is kind of curtailed by the fact he isn't in the country. So it's kind of a tricky one. He's well known, but I wouldn't put him in the same bracket as certainly in the same bracket as Premier League footballers. Cricket, maybe he's a bit closer to some of the cricket stars, just because our cricket team and our cricket players aren't as high profile as perhaps some of the teams of yesteryear. But I mean, he of a level, he's up there. In terms of UFC, if you said name me a British UFC fighter, the people who know would say Michael Bisping, and the people who don't know would say Conor McGregor, even though he's not British. So that's kind of how it goes.
Well, Simon, we appreciate your time. We'll let you go in just a couple of questions. At the end, I want to get a prediction from everybody how this main event goes. But before we get to that, I just want to know, how important do you think it is for Bisping to hold on to the title for the UFC to keep growing in the European market?
I don't think it's that important, I'll be honest with you. I think if it had happened a few years ago, then maybe, because it could have been part of a really sort of spearheading movement on the continent. But the UFC is growing across Europe at a really solid rate anyway. I think this event in Manchester is going to be the UFC's 7th straight sellout in the EMEA region, Europe, Middle East and Africa. So James Elliott and the team working out at the office in London here, they've done a fantastic job. They've been kind of balancing up, going to new markets and also servicing some of the old favourites. So they've broken new ground in places like Rotterdam and Zagreb and Krakow over the last few years, and all these events are selling out. And it shows that there's a real appetite for the sport, and it's the old Wayne's World thing: book it and they will come. And it's that, and the fan bases are there all over Europe. They just need to put the fights on, and I don't think they necessarily need Bisping as a world champion. I mean, we have other European world champions. We've got Ioanni and Jacek. We've got Conor McGregor. So, it's more about just pushing the sport as a whole. If you've got a champion you can latch onto in a particular territory, like Joanna in Poland, for example, then that obviously helps push things. But the sport is doing pretty well, and I think the demand is kind of outstripping the supply over here at the moment. So wherever they can put events on, provided that they continue planning and doing the due diligence that they've done so far, it's going to be a continued success. It's gone really well for the EMEA guys over the last 12-18 months or so, and I don't see that changing anytime soon.
Wow, so that's interesting. So if Dan Henderson somehow beats Michael Bisping, we'll talk about predictions next. You think, because I'm curious to hear from you, Simon, how do the fans perceive Dan Henderson over there? Because you'd think Michael Bisping would be a clear-cut favorite, but you mentioned a lot of the fans are hardcore MMA fans, so there must be a lot of respect for Henderson going into this fight. Will it be a situation almost where maybe even Henderson gets some cheers on the night, even if he beats Bisping?
Yeah, I think so. I honestly do. I think there'll be a huge amount of respect for Dan Henderson. That I think he's arguably the greatest American mixed martial artist of all time. You know, you look at the list of achievements that guy has racked up over his career. It's quite phenomenal, and he's a pretty classy guy to go along with it. So I think there is a huge amount of respect. He's gone through the different eras of the sport and has managed to stay relevant. And the knowledgeable MMA fans over on this side of the pond know that and respect that. I think the overwhelming majority will be cheering Michael Bisping to the rafters on Fight Night. But win or lose, I think Dan Henderson will get a huge ovation at the end of that fight, if indeed that proves to be his final fight. And if he puts his gloves down in the octagon, there'll be a standing ovation in the Manchester Arena, I guarantee it.
Wow, that would be an amazing moment to sort of be there and attend that live. All right, Simon, before we let you go, let's everybody do a prediction. Simon, we'll start from you. Obviously, Bisping's gone on to beat Rockhold and Silva. You look at their sort of career trajectories. Henderson's coming off a win over Lombard. Before that, not looking amazing, but he's always got that H-bomb waiting in the wings. Can he pull off the upset and retire as champion and do, as you just said, and lay his gloves down in the middle of the octagon? Or do you think Bisping gets it?
I think Henderson's got the ability to do it. I don't think he will. I think Bisping is a much smarter fighter than the guy who fought Henderson back at UFC 100. I think he'll use his feet. I think his feet will be the key to winning this fight. Just keep him moving, sticking and moving. His boxing under Jason Parillo is immeasurably better than it was much earlier in his career. And it was that boxing that basically took out Luke Rockhold, completely caught him cold. I expect the fight to go a little way. I think we'll get past round 3. And, we might see a late stoppage from Bisping against the tiring Henderson, or we might just see Bisping do what he's done so many times before and just use that cardio, use that gas tank, and just cruise his way to a decision win against Dan Henderson. I know he wants a finish in this fight, and I think as long as he doesn't get overzealous and try chasing something and getting caught, if he fights smart, then I think he gets this one done. I think Michael Bisping will retain his title. He's never lost on home soil, so I think he'll keep that record alive on Saturday night.
All right, Dennis, there's Simon's prediction. Dennis, what do you think? Do you agree with Simon, or are you going the other way with this one?
Yeah, no, I agree with Simon. I think Bisping's going to win this one. I think he's going to stop Dan Henderson in the 3rd round, but it could be a thing where he wins by decision. I agree with Simon, though. One of the things I will say is overconfidence. I hope Bisping doesn't come in overzealous, overconfident in this fight. Obviously, he's had some big success against Anderson Silva, Luke Rockhold, but he's got to be prepared for Dan Henderson because Dan Henderson is dangerous at all times. He's got that H-bomb. And he can't underestimate Dan Henderson. He's got to go into this fight like he is a Luke Rockhold. He's got to be hungry and he's got to be ready. And he, like Simon said, I agree with what you said, Simon. He can't chase that knockout at any cost because Henderson's a dangerous man and he can land that punch. We've seen Mike get hurt before and we've seen him get hurt by Henderson as well. So that, and also the fact that I hope he doesn't think about that fight from UFC 100 too much. I've spoken to fighters before and I've been in gyms with fighters before where a knockout like that has really affected them mentally, and they've either had a bit of emotion in rematches with fighters before, or it's affected them on a different level when they get in a similar situation, in a similar octagon with someone that's done that with them before. They instantly go back to that place mentally when it happened originally. And if something happens and Dan Henderson gets some momentum in this fight, I hope Michael doesn't go back to UFC 100 and forget about all the success that he's had recently. Because as we've spoken to with Jason Parillo time and time again, it's his self-confidence that does it for him. So if he's not overconfident and if he goes in with the right game plan, I believe, yeah, he definitely wins it. But Cass, what about you? I mean, we have to round out these predictions. Do you agree with me and Simon, or are you going to throw us a curveball here?
This is where it gets interesting. All right, look, you look at the first fight, UFC 100. Michael Bisping was doing quite well. The biggest mistake he made is he kept circling into Dan Henderson's power hand. I think that as a mistake, he's going to be wise enough and smart enough. I don't think you need to be a genius to really correct that mistake, and I think Michael's going to be able to do that. So you also look at the age. Neither one of them are young men, but obviously, like fine cheese, I would say Michael Bisping has aged a lot better than Dan Henderson, who's a lot more advanced in his age. Not only is, I guess, Michael Bisping, he's never been the best athlete, but he's a very good all-rounder. And as far as athleticism, Michael Bisping has that over Dan Henderson, who's, not only his, I guess, skills have sort of gone down, but just his body and his physically has gone down. And much like most fighters, the power is the last thing that stays, but he is slower and you can't hit where you can't, I guess, reach. And obviously Bisping, along with his other skills, he's a very, very good defensive fighter. I don't think Dan Henderson will be able to find a home for that right hand. There were other factors as well, such as Bisping, as he's gotten older, he seemingly has better power, and Dan Henderson, the guy who had a granite chin in the past, it seems like it's been cracked, or at least it's not where it used to be. So that sort of makes me even more confident that not only can Bisping sort of outpoint Dan Henderson, potentially get a 5-round decision, but he may even stop Dan Henderson somewhere in the 3rd or 4th rounds. Having said that, I also gave Bisping no chance against Luke Rockhold because theoretically he was so outgunned and so undermatched. A lot of other picks. I thought Lawler was going to beat Tyron Woodley. I thought Ronda Rousey was going to beat Holly Holm. There are plenty of others. And in this crazy year, oh, let's not forget Diaz and Conor McGregor. I got that one wrong as well, both times. So in this crazy year where upsets happen all the time and the guy that you think 100% will win doesn't, I'm going to say Dan Henderson 1st round knockout.
Oh, wow. There it is. This is a big one. So you're saying Dan Henderson 1st round knockout. Can you imagine if that happens? I just see people on Twitter going crazy about it. Hey, that's good because I feel like Submission Radio wins either way. If I'm right, they'll be like, oh, Submission Radio's right. If Casper's right, they'll be like, oh, Submission Radio's right. And I can bask in the glow of your glory and pretend I'm Casper for a few days. But there you guys go. Simon Head, thank you so much for joining us on the program. Guys, you can follow Simon on Twitter at Simon Head. There's a bunch of fun vlogs coming out as well. For fans who haven't seen any of your vlogs, Simon, or any of your video content, I mean, I imagine there's some fun stuff coming out with UFC 204. Tell us a little bit about them, and also tell us a little bit about your YouTube channel so they can jump on there and check it out.
Yeah, it's something kind of new that I'm doing because it makes no sense for me to just turn up and churn out the same stuff that the likes of MMA Junkie and MMA Fighting are doing. Plus, I'm flying solo, so that makes it a bit tricky anyway. So I decided I'm just going to shoot some of these behind-the-scenes kind of blogs, and they seem to have done quite well. I've done them at a few events, and they've had a good response when we've posted them directly onto the Sun site. So I've decided to branch out and stick a few on YouTube. So we'll see how they go. I've got a almost like a trailer type version on the top of the YouTube page. It's youtube.com/SimonHeadSport. So please do check that out. I'm hoping to get a vlog up at some point in the next 24, 48 hours from today at ACB. We did a little bit of commentary and punditry from cage side in the Hydro. So we'll do that. And at UFC 204, we'll look to do some fun stuff. Something we did in Hamburg. I've got like a little selfie video camera, and rather than go around doing media scrums with everyone, I gave every fighter on media day the selfie camera and said, right, I need you to send a message to all the fans back home. Why should we watch your fight? Send them a message back home, and all of them without fail gave me a really cool little clip that I could then stitch together. So we'll try and come up with a few other bits and pieces. If there's any kind of crazy or wacky ideas for stuff that you might want to see, please do hit me up on Twitter and let me know. I'm always on the lookout for some slightly different stuff to try when we're on fight week, just to keep things fresh and a little bit different. But it's going to be fun and games this week in Manchester. It's going to be crazy, but it's going to be good fun. And then obviously we've got the business end on Saturday. And to be honest, the big challenge for us guys is going to be acclimatising to American time while still being in the UK. So it's going to be late nights and lay-ins the following day, I think, just to get us ready. But it's going to be good fun.
Well, there you guys go. Make sure to jump onto his YouTube and check that out. Is that youtube.com/SI Sports News, Simon? Is that the official channel?
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I've changed the name over the years. So Sci Sports News works and Simon Head Sport. They both point to the same place. So either one of those is good. And probably the best thing to do is to follow me on Twitter, because I shamelessly plug everything I do on there anyway. So you won't miss that. So if you're following me, expect to get spam with links to all my stuff anyway. So yeah, please do give us a follow and follow my stuff as we go.
No, it's all right. Well, he's a modest man. He does great work. Make sure to jump on, follow him, check out his videos. We can't wait to watch your coverage next week for UFC 204. Thanks so much for joining us on the program, Simon. First time, you've definitely delivered, and we can't wait to see what happens over there in England.
Great stuff. Pop my submission radio cherry. It's all good stuff. And I look forward to catching up with you guys on the next international trip we both end ourselves on. So it should be good fun.
Awesome. Well, there you guys go. Simon Head, first time on Submission Radio. Don't forget to check out his stuff on YouTube. It's going to be amazing leading into UFC 204. But we're not done yet. We have Jeremy Botta coming up right after this.
This is Chael Sonnen, and you are listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys, our next guest has been doing great things as the managing editor for Flow Sports. He now joins us to discuss UFC 205 and all the crazy news that has come out this week. Oh, and he also lists himself as a barbecue expert on his Twitter bio. So, guys, without further ado, Jeremy Botta, welcome back to Submission Radio.
Yeah, good to be back. The last time I was on your show, it's kind of a crazy night. So let's hopefully we can avoid me having a total meltdown again, like I did last time.
It was a crazy experience. One we'll never forget. But I mean, I think a lot of people enjoyed it. On to more positive things. I mean, Dennis mentioned the barbecue. We love barbecue down here in Australia as well. So tell us, just curious, Jeremy, if there's a special occasion and you break out the barbecue, we know you're down in Texas. What kind of meat are you doing, and how are you doing it?
Oh no, I mean, I've never had Australian barbecue, so I don't know what you are referring to when you're calling it barbecue. But I mean, here, we're talking about, slow smoked brisket. I mean, and the cool thing about being at Flow Sports is within about 2 square miles of our office downtown Austin, we've got 4 of the top 5 barbecue places in Texas.
Oh wow!
And Texas barbecue is the best Texas. I mean, the best barbecue. Everybody knows that, I think, at this point. And so dude, like the problem is, like, when I first moved here, I was like eating barbecue every single day.
That's a problem. What do you mean? That's not a problem at all.
Well, I mean, that's not a problem, but the 20 pounds that I put on, that's kind of a problem.
Yeah.
But it's cool. I don't eat it as often as I used to. But I'm getting married in March, and we're gonna have our wedding is gonna be catered by the #1 barbecue restaurant in the world. So it's gonna be I will never give up barbecue. Let's put it that way.
Oh, well, you know what? If we ever get down there in Texas, you got to show us where these spots are. We're always trying to chase them down here in Australia. So I'm very excited about a potential trip down to Texas. But while we're talking about barbecue, Jeremy, how about this transition? Things have been hot in the MMA world with a full UFC 205 card finally being announced. Eddie Alvarez versus Conor McGregor being added in the 11th hour. Just on the announcement itself, what did you make of the way this fight was put together, with Khabib receiving 2 contracts to fight Eddie at both UFC 205 and 206, and then the last-second swerve? What did you make of it, and what did you think was the big hold-up in announcing McGregor-Alvarez? Did it really come down to the last minute?
Well, it's funny. It did come down to the last minute, but it was actually, I mean, when Conor said that he had agreed to the fight 10 days before, that's actually true. He did. And what happened is that, I mean, Eddie Alvarez was holding out for more money. To fight Conor, he wanted more money, and he refused to fight him. And so they said, okay, you're going to fight Khabib. And you're not going to get that Conor money. And he held his ground for a little bit, but look, if you're Eddie Alvarez and you're going, okay, I can fight Khabib and, probably lose by wrestling and make, X amount of money, or I can fight Conor McGregor and, still probably lose, but then make 10 or 12 times the amount that I was going to make. I would hold out as long as I can too. But, essentially the day before, about 45 minutes before Dana White went on ESPN and announced it, that's when they finally relented, and Eddie gave in, his team gave in, and he made the right choice, man. Like, look, if you have a chance to fight Conor McGregor, it's like you said, it's red panty night. I mean, who wouldn't want that fight? You're going to make a lot of money. He wanted more guaranteed money. But I mean, I can't blame him for like holding out as long as he did. But at the end of the day, I think he probably made the right business decision for himself.
Wow. Before we get into discussing our thoughts on if this was the right move, I guess on the UFC's part, Jose Aldo has threatened retirement and has asked to be released from his UFC contract. This is obviously due to the UFC not making McGregor vacate his featherweight title belt now that he's fighting Alvarez. Jeremy, what do you think of Aldo's comments, and is this sort of the beginning of a big backlash from fighters in response to this decision by the UFC?
I mean, I think that Jose Aldo is, from everything I can gather, is probably, his heart maybe hasn't been in the sport for quite some time. And he has been talked into, kind of sticking around. But he's a different kind of dude, man. Like, he's not he's not a fighter because he just has to fight or because he's got issues he needs to work out. I mean, it's what he does to pay the bills. And, if your heart's not in it and you see that you're being overlooked and, quite frankly, I mean, the new UFC is a totally different animal than the old UFC. I mean, they're cutting back the amount of shows they're doing. They're cutting the roster down. They're, cutting staff. Like it's there's a lot of uncertainty in what they're doing. And if I'm Jose Aldo and I'm looking at that and I'm going, okay, I mean, Dana White clearly is a liar, right? Like he said, I mean, you can never believe a thing the man says in public, but because he's a promoter. So like, when he says things are business as usual, they're not business as usual. When he says Conor has to let go of the title, he's not going to let go of the title. I mean, I think we've all figured that out at this point. And it took Jose Aldo a little while to figure that out. I guess he was holding out hope that there would be, that Dana would, give him the shot, the McGregor rematch on sporting grounds. But I mean, guys, the truth is like, I mean, this is a sport, sure, but like more than a sport, it's a promotional thing, right? The name of the game is prize fighting, like that you make the biggest fights possible. And I mean, frankly, not a lot of people are interested in McGregor and Aldo. The idea of McGregor going up and fighting for another title, that's a lot more interesting. And I mean, dude, I've been saying it. I think I said it on your show, and I've been saying it since last December before he beat Jose Aldo. Connor's never going to fight at 145 pounds again. He's never going to. He has before that fight, people in his camp told me that that was it. Win or lose, he was not fighting at 145 again because the cut was too hard. So I mean, Jose Aldo, I mean, I guess probably should have known that he couldn't trust Dana White. Dana White's going out there and saying that he's going to do something and that Conor, he's going to make Conor do something. Hey, Jose should have known that it was bullshit because, I mean, frankly, Dana has nothing to do with Conor McGregor's negotiations. I mean, he has not for quite some time. They don't have a relationship. They don't do the contracts together. They both of them attempt to try to pass it off in public like they're doing just fine. But I think everybody can pretty much tell now what I said late last year, early this year, that they're not fine. There's not a good relationship there. And when Jose Aldo, in July or when he heard, or August, when he heard that, his next fight's going to be Aldo or he's going to give up the belt, I mean, he should have known, but you can't blame a guy like that for, I guess, trusting in his employer. But at this point, I think, I don't know that we'll see him in the UFC again. I mean, they may try to get out of his UFC contract and he may, try to go somewhere else. But I mean, truthfully, I don't know that we'll see him fight again. He's not that interested in fighting.
Well, so just to clarify, this is not a negotiation tactic on Aldo. Obviously, maybe you can't, say yes or no, black and white. But in your opinion, you don't buy it as this is Aldo just lobbying for what McGregor did essentially a few months ago in his own sort of quote-unquote retirement. This is Aldo is sort of legitimate, you believe?
No, I can tell you black and white. It's not a negotiation tactic. I mean, this is not what Conor did. Firing off a tweet saying he was retiring to try to force the UFC's hand. Although doesn't have any interest in forcing the UFC's hand, he feels like he's been disrespected. And yeah, it's not a negotiation tactic. As of right now, that he's not going to fight again. I mean, or at least for the UFC. He's got enough money to live the rest of his life in comfort. I wouldn't be surprised, man. It'd be a huge shame, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him never return to MMA.
What do you make of the fact that Dana White claimed he wanted to see Conor McGregor face Jose Aldo, even though, according to Aldo, he was never offered the fight, and McGregor claimed that he was offered the fight 10 days before the press conference, which is around the same time that Dana said he wanted to see him against Aldo. Do you think there was really ever any intention of making this Aldo fight?
No. There's never been an intention, dude. I mean, unless it happens at 155, and he's never going to fight at 145 again. They're aware of that. The UFC's aware of that. That Conor's camp has told them that. They can say what they want in public, just to be able to hold on to the belt for a little bit longer, so that he can win 2 championships at once. But he's not going back to 145. So anything, man, at this point, dude, I think you should know that anything that Dana White says is bullshit. Like, everybody should know that. Anything that guy says on interviews or whatever, He is in a state of constantly lying, which is fine. You know, I mean, he's a promoter. That's his job. He does a really good job at it. But he's never telling the truth. He's never telling the truth. And it's actually amazing to me these days that I still see headlines on websites that, Dana White says such and such. Like, it's all a bunch of shit. He doesn't tell the truth, and he's constantly promoting, and he's constantly, the whole thing with George St. Pierre, for example, right? Like, he doesn't think GSP wants to fight. He's essentially calling GSP a pussy in public. And meanwhile, GSP is back in the USADA pool and is being tested and wants to come back to the UFC. He wants to fight. It's just that's a negotiation thing. He's claiming he doesn't want to fight. And so you have all these people, fans of the sport, who apparently have not been around long enough to know that you just can't trust a thing that Dana White says.
Well, the interesting situation right now is you mentioned that he won't go down to featherweight again. At the moment, he still has his belt. If he's not going back down to featherweight, are you expecting them to strip him of the belt after UFC 205? They mentioned that he's going to hold on to the belt through UFC 205, but it does seem like they want to take it off him. But in the press conference, we all saw Conor McGregor said they'll need to get an army to take the belts away from him. It doesn't look like he has any intention of getting rid of that featherweight belt. What happens with that featherweight belt?
Well, I mean, they can strip him if they want to. That's they can do it right now, and he can't do anything about it. They did it with John Jones, right? I mean, that's just one example. Yeah, but the thing is when Conor says they're going to need an army to get it off me, what he's saying is, give me a new contract. Look, so if he beats Eddie Alvarez, he wins the championship. I guarantee you he's going to relinquish that title, but he's not going to do it. I mean, it's not that he has any say in the matter, but, as long as they give him a big raise, a big new contract, which he pretty much gets a new contract every fighter, every 2 fights, he won't raise a fuss about it. And if they do, if they don't give him a new contract, then it becomes another situation like we saw earlier this year.
I'm just curious because wouldn't it be a situation where they let Aldo know, though, that, hey, McGregor will be getting rid of that belt or we'll be stripping him of that belt, in the next few months? When they find out that Aldo wants to leave, would they somehow try and get that message to him that, hey, you're close to actually being the champion, the belt is almost away from McGregor? Or do you think for some reason they just haven't been able to communicate with Aldo on that level? Or do you think it's not that Aldo wants the belt, but he wants that rematch more than the belt?
I mean, I think he wants McGregor more than he wants the belt. I mean, he had the belt forever. But dude, I mean, the truth is, man, like, they've never really communicated with Jose Aldo. I mean, there are very few of their fighters, unless you're on Dana's cool person list, and they don't talk to him. They go a long time without communication. And bottom line is, Jose Aldo's one of my favorite fighters of all time. Like, I have loved watching that guy since early in his career, early in my career. But the truth is, they don't view him as he's never drawn a big buy rate. I mean, he has pulled out of fights far too often for their liking, and I get that aspect. And so, they don't care about Jose Aldo. I mean, truthfully, they don't care about anybody that they have on their roster, but they really don't care about Jose Aldo. And so, no, I mean, I don't think that they're going to go out of their way to tell him that, to let him know, like, hey, everything's going to be okay in a few months. You'll get your chance to unify the title. I don't think they care about that. That's not high on their list of priorities.
It's interesting because if McGregor decides to stay at lightweight and then Jose Aldo decides to, retire and never fight again, you've sort of got this big gap at the top of the featherweight division. I'm just wondering, Jeremy, what do you think about obviously we know Jose Aldo's plans, but what do you think the UFC would do? And would they actually let him go and release him from his contract? Would they sort of force him to stay?
I mean, I don't think they're going to let him go. Well, you know what? To be honest, I'm not entirely sure. Because there's going to be a lot of roster cuts coming up because they're downsizing the amount of shows they're doing for next year. So that it's going to be a smaller roster. And maybe, it's a different era, man. This is not the kind of thing where Lorenzo and Dana just decide stuff together like they used to. I mean, this is Ari Emanuel and Patrick Whitesell, and they are cost cutting at the UFC. They are drastically reducing overhead, staff, everything. And so maybe it's a thing where they do let him go. They just decide to let him go rather than face a protracted lawsuit if that's the way Aldo decides to go, or to get any bad PR from keeping him under contract. Maybe they just decide to let him go. I don't know.
I've been working on a bit of a conspiracy theory, Jeremy, and I want you to weigh in on this. We're all looking at this as if Conor McGregor is going to beat Eddie Alvarez at UFC 205. Eddie's a tough fighter, and there's a good chance he may win. And we want to get your thoughts on that matchup in just a second. But if McGregor does lose against Alvarez, is that featherweight title as a backup plan for McGregor and what happens to him next? Because then at least he's still champion of the featherweight division. Or you think, because you've mentioned this a number of times, there is just no chance he's going to go back down to that division, even if he loses to Eddie Alvarez?
No, dude, I would be shocked if he goes back to 145, even if he does lose to Eddie Alvarez. Because for Conor, he's already won the championship. For Conor, it's not about because he's a smart man, he's a smart fighter, and he's a businessman. And for Conor, it's not about going down and defending the belt and establishing his legacy and all that stuff. Like, that's the stuff that MMA fans care about. But that's not what he cares about, man. He cares about making money. That's it. That's the be all end all. Making as much money as possible, because that's the name of the game. And he doesn't care about his legacy, so he doesn't have to go back down to 145. And that's the thing that people don't get. Like, I see all the complaining. He's holding up the featherweight division and blah, blah, blah. And he hadn't beaten anybody, even though he has, obviously. It was a fluke knockout. And, man, like, the thing is, like, do you think he does not give a shit about that? He does not give – like, he wants the biggest fight. So if Conor beats Eddie Alvarez, I almost guarantee you his first title defense is going to be Nate Diaz at 155. I guarantee it. And, I mean, the truth is, like, why would he go back? I mean, why would Conor McGregor go back down to 145? So he can defend his belt against Max Holloway, who's never been, a great fighter, but never been in a pay-per-view main event. Why would he, to face Frankie Edgar, who's been in many, many pay-per-view main events and it's never been a draw? Like, those are not big fights. Conor cares about big fights. The big fights for him right now, until some superstar comes along, are at 155 and 170, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, that's crazy. Talk to us about this matchup, Jeremy. How do you sort of see it? Obviously, Alvarez claims it's the easiest fight that he could have had in the division. How do you see this fight
That's
going?
ridiculous, by the way. That's ridiculous. Like, when he said that, I actually laughed out loud. Like, I like Eddie, and he's a fighter's fighter. But, the truth is I think McGregor gets it done in the first round. I think it's going to be a knockout because, Eddie has been – it's been proven that if you can hit Eddie right on the chin, he's going to go down. He may not stay down, but you're going to hurt him. You're going to put him down. And like you can see even at the press conference the other day when Eddie was saying, you've got your little boy belt, and like I was cracking up because McGregor's like 4 inches taller than him, and it's way it's way bigger. He's got Conor. People don't. Because he is such an asshole sometimes in public. People don't give him credit for his fighting skills, But the truth is, like, he's a very good fighter, and he's faced better wrestlers than Eddie Alvarez, and has beaten them. Nate Diaz was able to execute, getting him down and keeping him there because he's long, and shorter wrestlers just are not going to be able to do it to him. Actually, I have a admission that I haven't admitted anywhere else. Like, I still have not seen the rematch from August.
No,
like, that's kind of embarrassing.
You didn't watch UFC
202. Seriously, no, I have not, dude. I've seen literally like 4 fights since not cards, but like 4 whole fights since UFC 200. I haven't been able to watch. So like, I should probably watch that rematch before I like weigh in on my thoughts on this.
Wow.
The style versus style fight here. But like, I don't see Eddie getting it done. I wouldn't say he has a weak chin, but it can be cracked, and I think Conor's going to crack it.
This is like Anchorman, where the dog eats the wheel of cheese. It's like, I'm not even mad. I'm impressed. I'm just curious, just for my own curiosity. Why did you not watch the rematch? Is it just work? Is it busy? Or have you just been? Have you discovered a 5th barbecue joint? Is that what's happened here?
No, dude. So the truth is, like, I really wanted to watch the fight, and I was super excited. But I had to go to a wedding in Tennessee, and like, not just in Tennessee, but it was about 2 hours outside of Nashville, Tennessee, which is in the woods. There's no internet. Like, there's barely electricity. And so, I mean, there was no phone service. I literally had no way of knowing what was going on. And so my plan was, like, okay, I'm going to stay off the phone. I'm going to stay off everything until we get back to, civilization. And then I will order it on Fight Pass, and I will watch it, right, later that night. Well, I mean, we didn't get back from the wedding until probably 12:30 in the morning, and I'm like, all right, like, I'm pretty tired, but, I want to see this. And so I pull up, the Fight Pass, and it spoils it right there on the homepage. And I was like, well, so much for that. I'm going to bed. So yeah, honestly, I have the fight. I've got it saved. I just haven't had the time, man. I hadn't had the time to dive into it.
Last couple of questions, Jeremy, because we know you're a busy man, especially now after knowing that you didn't watch that fight. So we don't want to take up too much of your time. You mentioned the UFC 205 press conference. I'm curious because there was a bit of trash talk back and forth. Obviously, McGregor had some classic moments, but Alvarez had his moments too. What are you expecting in the lead up to this fight? Do you think Alvarez could hang in there in the trash talk back and forth, or do you think McGregor gets into his head eventually?
Dude, there's nobody in the world except for Nate Diaz who can hang with Conor McGregor in the trash talk department. And when he's on like he was at that press conference, he's the best ever. I mean, I'd put him up. I mean, I think he's better than, like, the stuff that he was saying that day. Like, he was in a class of his own, better than Ali even, right? Ali had, like, his scripted lines and whatever, but he wasn't as quick on his feet. Wasn't able to come up with responses that quickly. I mean, look at poor Jeremy Stevens. Does anybody know if Jeremy Stevens is okay right now? Like, that guy, he got ruined. Conor absolutely destroyed him with what? Who the fuck is that guy? Like, that, I feel so bad for that guy. I hope he's okay. That's exactly right there. That kind of moment is what I'm talking about. I mean, that is it's a spur of the moment thing where that separate Conor's ability to do that, to respond quickly, to come up with stuff on the fly, separates him from the greats because, they kind of scripted their lines and they had their bits that they had to get out. He just comes up with them on the fly, man. So, yeah, to answer your question, fuck no, Eddie Alvarez can't hang with Conor in the trash talk department, dude. Nobody can.
That's definitely a clear answer. Let me ask you something, Jeremy, because you know this next man that I want to ask about, and while you're talking about the best trash talk and Ali, who, in your opinion, is a better trash talker, Chael Sonnen or Conor McGregor?
It's Conor. And I say that, and Chael's probably going to get mad when he sees that when I said this, because he's a buddy of mine, but. And we've worked with him. We worked with him in the past. We work with him in the future here at Flow Sports, doing some stuff. But Chael comes up with some cool lines, but a lot of them are old pro wrestling lines that he's lifted from 1970s and early 80s pro wrestling. In terms of just straight trash talk, spur of the moment trash talk, when Conor McGregor is on his A++ game the way he was in New York, he's unstoppable.
Final question, Jeremy, and we'll let you go. The biggest fight of them all, it seems like, for McGregor eventually, is a fight with GSP. What do you think? Do we ever see that fight happen? Is there a chance it comes together after this fight with Eddie Alvarez? What's your feel on this one?
Yes, I do think it happens. I don't know that it's going to happen immediately after this fight with Alvarez. I think his next fight with Alvarez is going to be Nate Diaz. Provided that WME IMG can come to an agreement with Reebok and with GSP, essentially, that will allow GSP to either wear no branded shorts or to maybe wear his Under Armour shorts, or if he wears Reebok, to pay him a lot more money, to compensate for sponsorship loss. Then yeah, it's going to happen. If I were a betting man, I'd put pretty good odds. Like I think it's going to happen, man. I think maybe it might be next summer before it happens. Might be next July, but I think it happens.
Wow, exciting times. All right, guys, there is Jeremy Botta from Flow Sports. Make sure to follow him on Twitter at Jeremy Botta. He has a ton of very interesting opinions. And check out Flow Sports at flowcombat.com for all your latest MMA news. They are a phenomenal site, just a huge, huge uprising in the last, year or so. Jeremy, we know you have a lot of exciting MMA events streaming live on the site, just a ridiculous amount of content. What's an event fans need to look out for?
Man, honestly, we have MMA events every single weekend. We have at least one, usually two, sometimes three, sometimes four live events every single weekend. So if you're the guy if you're the person that subscribes to Fight Pass and watches all these promotions that are not the UFC, then you'd like us.
There you guys go, Jeremy Botta. What a pleasure to have him on the program. Second time he's on the show, always delivers. Can't wait to see what's next for Flow Sports. We have a feeling there's a lot of big things coming out. And Flow Combat, like you mentioned, Cass, Dwayne Finley doing an amazing job there. You guys have to check it out. So much great content, so many great writers, and they've really achieved a lot over this short period that they've been around. But before we go, Cass, a lot of people always want to find out what our thoughts are on things. And I guess before we wrap up this episode, we just should share just a couple of thoughts that we have about UFC 205 in this main event. I might just kick it off real quick. I was in a frame of mind where I really wanted to see Conor McGregor versus Jose Aldo because I really felt like he needed to defend his belt or vacate his belt. And we had Barca written on the show recently, and he said, no way the UFC would let him hold on to his belt and not make him vacate it if he fights Eddie Alvarez. And then here we are. But so from a fan's perspective, from a MMA fan's perspective, from a sports perspective, that does bother me about this. But I just can't hide the fact I'm super excited for this matchup. I'm more excited for this matchup than I would be a Jose Aldo rematch. And I guess the fact that he still has his featherweight belt for some reason just makes it even more exciting for me. I can see from a casual fan perspective, from a business perspective, how this makes sense. So, a big part of me is really happy that this fight has come together.
Yeah, I'm sort of sitting here eating my words because when we were in Vegas last for UFC 202, I still can't believe Jeremy Botta hasn't seen that fight. When we were there, we did our post-fight breakdown. We spoke to Simon Head, and we spoke about how I said that he should be stripped if he's going to come up to lightweight because that's the right thing. And here I am sort of sitting here ridiculously excited about the fact that, we may be witnessing history and the first guy to ever sort of hold the lightweight title and the featherweight titles consecutively, or just, two titles consecutively in general, regardless of the weight class, and that's going to be a first in the UFC. So I'm excited about it. I'm also eating my words because I thought there was zero way that this fight was going to happen because of, what Dana White said. Not that I believed for a second that Conor McGregor was injured. I never believed that. I always thought that was ridiculous, and I always knew it was about some kind of negotiations, whether it was on Conor's end or Eddie's end or someone's end, but I just thought to sort of publicly come out and say, Conor's injured, how are you going to go back on that? What kind of excuse are you, really going to have? And essentially, Dana White has had no excuse. I think I saw something where Dana White was saying, well, he knows his body, something. It was basically no excuse. So I guess anything goes. If you can make a big super fight, the UFC will go for it regardless of how it looks. One thing about the featherweight division that I will say, obviously, They do have a champion, but essentially in some ways they don't because he's not technically in the division. Like Jeremy said, he's probably never going to go back to the division. In some ways, and I'm not saying it takes anything away from UFC 205, but in some ways it kind of devalues a lot of the fights in the featherweight division, even any up-and-coming ones. Like, let's say, hypothetically, Jose Aldo fights Anthony Pettis or a Max Holloway, right? Which both would be phenomenally fun, entertaining fights that I'd look forward to. But knowing that this fight doesn't really have anything at the end of the road, like, they'll fight and one guy will win, but it's not really for a title belt. It's essentially for an interim belt, which means nothing. It does sort of devalue any of those fights. And any of the other guys, like, let's say Max Holloway fights someone else, and you think like, well, he's moving up in the rankings, and he's, all roads normally in any division point to a title shot. That's kind of the whole allure of it. It does devalue them just a little bit, knowing that it's not really going anywhere. But like I said, here I am sitting here excited for UFC 205, happy that we may potentially see a fighter for the first time hold two belts at the same time.
Yeah. And, I still believe that if McGregor loses against Alvarez, and it's a really, really dominating loss, I still believe that he may go down to featherweight as a backup plan and defend his title against someone. So I guess we'll see what happens there, because he just can't. If he does lose this fight, I mean, a third fight with Nate Diaz might make sense. There might be that fight with GSP, but maybe it doesn't come together so soon. So he still has sort of a fight to kill. So maybe there's someone from the featherweight division, especially if you got an Anthony Pettis or something like that. There still might be a big fight to make for him down there, and still bank on the fact that he's champion in another division, come off a big win, and then maybe make his way back up to lightweight if that happens. But that's the big thing. I think so many things are up in the air. I'm interested in what Jeremy Botta said. I think if the UFC are planning to strip McGregor right after UFC 205, I do believe that would be something that would tell Aldo to stick around for, because obviously he wants to be champion, and who knows, maybe he wants this rematch more than the title. I mean, maybe Jeremy Botta has a point. But at the moment, I just think we're at a very, very fun crossroads, and UFC 205 is just such an amazing card that I can forgive all the sort of silly situations that fans have to go through and we have to go through to get here. I'm super excited for this fight. Can't wait for UFC 205. It's going to be an exciting lead up to the event.
Yeah, a lot of exciting times, both in and out of the cage. I'm very, very curious to see how this Jose Aldo situation pans out. But look, I think that's enough from us. It's been a big episode. It's been a long episode. Hopefully, you guys have been enjoying it. And if you have been enjoying it, feel free to jump on iTunes, give us a review. You don't even have to give us a review. Just put in however many stars you think we deserve. It really helps the program. So thank you guys for listening. Thank you, obviously, to all our fantastic guests that we have on the show. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson returning. We love having him as always. Tony Ferguson, who returns to the show, and thanks to him for taking the time to talk about starting his new facility so that he can be the best version of himself. Owen Roddy. It's very rare that we get to have someone from the McGregor camp come on the show, but we definitely love it. Jason Parillo, always love having him on. Great insight. Jeremy Botta, a ton of insight, a ton of knowledge. Simon Head, who's always a great guy, and we have had many beers with, so we could chat to him for forever and a day. And of course, maybe even the most important guest, the Thai guy, Matt Morea, making a splash on Submission Radio. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. It's been a great show. Reminder that next week, it's just going to be a breakdown episode. We will not be having a bunch of guests like this week and most other weeks. It's going to be just a quick breakdown surrounding UFC 204. So nice and quick, nice and express, and hopefully you guys will enjoy. Anything I've forgotten, Dennis? Anything I've missed?
No, that's it. And if you want to jump on Twitter, follow us at Submission AUS. Jump on Facebook. Great time to like the page, Submission Radio AUS. And we will catch you guys next week for the UFC 204 breakdown.